This is Dr. Garrett Smith, known as the nutrition detective around these here YouTube parts. And today we have an exciting show. It's going to be all about anaphylaxis, which is, for those of you who don't know, it's a life-threatening allergic reaction. This is what you hear about when ignorant people mock like true peanut allergies, or they mock food allergies, where particularly kids have to carry around EpiPens so they don't die. And people think it's just a weakness of society, or they say other stupid things about it. It's a very real thing. My son is anaphylactic allergic to tree nuts by both blood testing and skin testing. I'll go over how that probably happened and how I was partially the cause of it. My toxic ex-wife, and I mean real toxicity, not like the so-called, where people are like, oh, a toxic woman or a toxic man. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about actual like copper toxicity, vitamin A toxicity, stuff like that. And then I made him more vitamin A toxic, and we'll go over all of the stuff about connecting those things to toxicity as we go, as we always do, right? Toxicities, deficiencies, toxic bile theory. When we start getting into this stuff about the liver and the bile in terms of anaphylaxis, you're gonna see that anaphylaxis is a bile problem. It's something is going on with bile. Like, why do certain people get exposed to something that is not a problem, and then all of a sudden supposedly their immune system goes bonkers and tries to kill them? That doesn't make any sense. And then, so in theory, when we understand toxic bile theory, what would epinephrine, adrenaline injections be very good at doing? Well, they're probably very good at shutting down bile production. So anyway, we'll get into all that. First thing I want to say is that Kelsey, our niacin nicotinic acid guru, has opened up her Etsy store, and she is selling all sorts of cool things. So Joe will probably put up the link to her store. Kelsey, feel free to put the link to your store in the chat and in the comments. You guys, I use her stuff. I sometimes, I'll be honest, sometimes I get early releases of her things. She sends stuff to me, and I'm always excited to try it. And it's good stuff. So definitely go check that out. It's Terranean Treasures. Is that right? I think it's, yeah, Terranean Treasures is the name of her store on Etsy. Joe put up the link. So we got that. And now one other thing. I have decided to be the bigger person. I tend to get into internet squabbles with the followers of Ray Peat and Ray Peat's ideas. I have a very strong stance on this because I followed Ray Peat's concepts for a bit. They made me quite a bit worse. And I have multiple people who have come to me who follow Ray Peat inspired practitioners. One of my major influences in my early health days was Matt Stone, who is a good friend of mine, but he was also into the Ray Peat thing, and he has also kind of recanted his entire Ray Peat thing. And we have lots of people who tried Ray Peat's approaches, his concepts, and they got worse, and now they're working with me. And apparently my name and my concepts are a big thing on certain Ray Peat forums on the internet. And I like to think we're helping people. I will not be using any derogatory terms for those who follow the concepts of Ray Peat, because it is simply that they have been misled. I believe they're a bit misguided. I did think that I was being very, very intelligent when I found Ray Peat, and I was like, this guy sounds great, and he puts out good information, and I'm going to do it. And I did it, and it didn't work. So I have no animosity towards the followers of Ray Peat and his concepts. I will absolutely have zero tolerance for those who follow Ray Peat and who also decide to post character assassination or character attacks, and that's the entire extent of their argument. That will not be tolerated, but I will not be, it will simply be blocking and ignoring. There will be no name calling from my end. I will not be using the term petards anymore or anything like that. It's not weakness on my part. It's just I've tired of it, and I'm here to help people. So for those of you who, let's say, maybe you're questioning how you feel on Peat, and you're wondering where are all these wonderful improvements, or why did I improve at the start and then all that's kind of gone away, and now eating excessive amounts of sugar and other things like that are only making you gain weight. There is a place for you in the Love Your Liver program, and I am only here to help. And the perspectives that I give come from experience. So you are welcome to do whatever you want. You are welcome to try it out and hope that it works. And if it doesn't, and you're wondering why you got exactly the opposite of what you were hoping to get, this is what I'm here to explain. So let's go into anaphylaxis now. So anaphylaxis, another of modern medicine's things where they're just like, oh no, your immune system is dumb and it attacks you and it tries to kill you when you eat a peanut or when you get stung by a bee, or sometimes it happens. This is going to be the good thing. Sometimes it happens and we have no idea why. So sorry about the video today, folks. If the video's a little slow, then, well, that's just, I'm working on getting a better modem. Joe, I don't know how to stop a screen share if I have multiple ones going. If there is more than one screen share going, yeah, I have no idea how to turn it off. So hold on one sec, folks. We're trying to do. Oh, there it is. Okay. Okay. Well, I did it. Maybe it's working. Okay, so we'll see. We shall see. Okay, maybe that helped. So let's get into it. So anaphylaxis, right? Anaphylaxis, that basically modern medicine is like, your immune system's dumb. It tries to kill you. We don't know why, but we're going to look for all these mechanisms of what's going on. And we're just going to assume that your immune system did something really dumb. Well, we're going to go over that. So Joe, if you can share my screen now. So we got this. Okay. So this is, I want to go over the basic things on anaphylaxis real quick. This is going to be a long show, folks. So settle in, and it's worth it. This is the Mayo Clinic on anaphylaxis. Okay. Let me aim this down a little bit more. There we go. This is the Mayo Clinic on anaphylaxis. Anaphylaxis is a severe life-threatening allergic reaction. Well, let's just go over something. Does modern medicine know their ass from a hole in the ground about what causes allergies? Are they good at fixing allergies? No, they're terrible at fixing allergies. But we're going to go over something that's one of their techniques to reduce allergies. And the funny thing is it changes the bile. Well, wow, that's going to be weird to figure out. So life-threatening allergic reaction. And no, okay, so let me back up here. If you have an anaphylactic problem, you should still be carrying nothing I say here means that you don't need to carry your EpiPen. Okay? Just because you might be working on the root cause of it doesn't mean you still need to carry your emergency medicine with you, whether that's Benadryl, whether that's an EpiPen, whether that's, as we get into later, if you want to keep some charcoal around and some nicotinic acid, some flush niacin, we'll go over those things. But I want you to understand how important preventing death from anaphylaxis is to me. I have on my keychain, I have a special metal contraption that is made for a cricothyroidectomy. I believe that's the name of it, where you puncture the membrane in the throat to make an airway so somebody could breathe in an anaphylactic reaction. I carry that on my keychain everywhere because if what they're finding now is EpiPens don't always work the first time. That's why they give you 2 now. And if it doesn't work the first time and it doesn't work the second time, then you're kind of screwed, unless you're like me, where I would have no issue. I've already told my son this. If he ever has an anaphylactic reaction, I say, I'm going to wait until he says, well, Dad, I'd rather you didn't puncture my throat. And I was like, well, would you rather die? And he says, no. So I'm okay with it. And I said, I'll just wait until you pass out and then we'll do it. So that's, yeah. So this does, what we're going over today does not discount your need for emergency medicine. Don't be dumb. Okay. If you're not fixed, you're still sort of broken. So if you have anaphylaxis and you're watching this, this doesn't change anything about your emergency management of the condition in the moment. What modern medicine is pretty good at doing is stopping you from dying. So keep your EpiPen on you. My boy has it in a butt pack, carries it everywhere with him. And then I have my tool on my keychain. So here we go. Let's go back to the screen share. Anaphylaxis causes the immune system to release a flood of chemicals. Interesting. The immune system releases a flood of chemicals. That can cause you to go into shock. Okay, so we're going to talk about septic shock here too today. Blood pressure drops suddenly and the airways narrow, blocking breathing. Sounds kind of like allergic reactions often have trouble breathing. So is anaphylaxis just like a severe allergic reaction? Yes. Signs and symptoms include a rapid weak pulse, a skin rash. Interesting. Do we ever talk about toxic bile causing skin problems? Okay. And nausea and vomiting. Well, nausea and vomiting are bile in the stomach. Interesting pattern that's showing up here. Common triggers include certain foods, some medications, insect venom, and latex. Anaphylaxis requires an injection of epinephrine or 2 and a follow-up trip to an emergency room. If you don't have epinephrine, you need to go to an emergency room immediately. If anaphylaxis isn't treated right away, it can be fatal. So your immune system is so dumb that when it gets super scared, it's going to try to kill you by releasing chemicals into the system. Does this make sense? No. But what if something was triggered in your system to be released in high doses? So let's just go back to this. Let's go here. We got another thing on anaphylaxis. This is from Stat Pearls. Okay. This is a book. Anaphylaxis is an acute, that means very short term, life-threatening hypersensitivity disorder. Defined as a generalized, rapidly evolving multisystemic allergic reaction. Anaphylactic reactions were classified as IgE. Remember IgE. Mediated responses, while anaphylactoid reactions as IgE independent events. Physical presentations of anaphylaxis range from mild skin flushing and pruritus, that's itching, to severe respiratory symptoms. Let me go down here. This is the part I wanted to go over. It can be defined as a rapidly evolving, generalized, multi-system allergic reaction. So why is your immune system releasing chemicals all over the system? Or, as we talk about in toxic bile theory, are you potentially massively leaking bile into your bloodstream? Like something triggered a massive, massive, massive bile dump, and it leaks into your system, and then it causes a systemic, multi-systemic allergic reaction. So without treatment, anaphylaxis is often fatal due to its rapid progression to respiratory collapse. This is the key thing. Recently, these terms, as they say, historically, anaphylactic reactions were categorized as IgE-mediated responses, while anaphylactoid reactions were categorized as IgE-independent events. Now you're going to disregard that entirely. Recently, these terms have been consolidated or combined into a single diagnosis of anaphylaxis. So they're putting it all together. This is usually what they do when they don't know what causes it. They're just like, we don't know what causes it, so we're going to try to stop separating it now. Okay. So common inciting sources may include exposure to certain medications, foods, or insect stings. Immunotherapy, injections directed at improving overall allergic response can induce a hyperacute reaction. So that's like allergy shots could cause you to go anaphylactic. There are also other oral immunotherapy. There's other immunotherapies where they're trying to exposure therapy. So I want you to think of, what is exposure therapy? Exposure therapy is when you have an issue with something. Let's say you're very afraid of something. Let's say, just as something that I had to go through, let's say as a guy, you're kind of scared of approaching women and, starting to talk to a woman you don't know, and you want to learn how to do that. Well, how are you going to do it? You're going to be scared, but if you do it once, all of a sudden you go, okay, I was scared, but I did it. Okay, and then you do it again, and it's easier. And then you do it again, and 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 it's easier. It's like every time somebody were to, if you fought, if you let's say you do jujitsu or you do martial arts, and every time you fight, you get more used to fighting, so that fighting scares you less. So think about the immune systems the same way. They can do exposure therapy with tiny, tiny bits of the allergen, the trigger. And the body starts getting used to it and saying, oh, I don't know why I'm doing this. Maybe I should not do this, or maybe I could do this less. Maybe I'm less afraid of whatever this is triggering. Okay. So latex hypersensitivity is occurring in increased prevalence. Wow. I say toxicities and deficiencies are increasing, and they say that allergies, anaphylactic allergies, are increasing too. And as with any hypersensitivity, anaphylaxis is an inherent risk. Occasionally, the offending agent is not identified. These reactions are identified as idiopathic anaphylaxis. So your body just tried to kill you for no reason at all, or we just can't figure out the reason. I just want to be clear on that. Okay. Let me get back up here. Did I do anything? So now I want to go over one concept that was brought to my attention by Grant Genereux. You can go find his website at ggenereux.blog. I highly recommend not spending time in the forum there, as it has been overrun with trolls and people who don't understand vitamin A toxicity. So take that for what it's worth. Now, I want you to pay attention here. Likelihood of child outgrowing food allergy depends on the type and the severity of the allergy. This is the Mayo Clinic again. Dear Mayo Clinic, is it possible for children to outgrow food allergies? Answer: some children may outgrow their food allergies. So, about 60 to 80% of young children with a milk or egg allergy are able to have those foods without a reaction by the time they reach age 16. Interesting. What phony vitamin are milk and eggs high in, folks? Oh, is that what you meant by Zoom, Joe? I misinterpreted your Zoom on that last one. I thought you meant Zoom, the program. Recent studies suggest that children with egg or milk allergies who can eat those foods in a baked form, such as a muffin, without an allergic reaction, are very likely to be able to tolerate plain egg or plain milk in the future. Well, let's go over some things here. Eggs and milk are quite high in vitamin A. Your liver stores vitamin A when you take in more than you can get rid of. Grant came up in one of his ebooks with an amazing concept of why do kids sometimes outgrow their asthma? Why do they outgrow their eczema? Why do they outgrow their skin problems? Why do they outgrow egg and milk allergies? Here's the idea that he came up with. As when a child really starts hitting their growth spurt, as they are growing taller and basically wider, their liver is also growing in 3D. Their liver's growing in width and length and height. Okay? Their liver is growing 3D. And so as their liver is growing and the liver's making new tissue that is, in theory, not full of toxicity yet, because it's brand new, that kind of dilutes the toxicity. It allows the liver to move the concentrated toxicity to other parts of the liver that don't have much yet. And in doing so, it brings the overall toxicity down. Now, let me find, well, let me just continue on this. I want to find my Twitter thread on the, let me see. Let's see if Twitter can actually find it when I know the words that are in it. There we go. Okay. So if you guys want to go and look at my thread here on Twitter, if you're not following my Twitter, boy, you should. You'll find that there seems to be a big difference in when they look at the liver toxicity. And a lot of these papers, let me just go find one of them. What they found oftentimes was in those who were below 10 years old, they often found that they were almost as toxic as the oldest people. Let me find one. Oh, here you go. So this was a study in New Zealand, 1950. There's two studies in New Zealand, 1951 and 1961. Okay. They found that 28% of people were technically vitamin A toxic in their liver. They were over 900. Their toxicity, the toxicity amount was 952. So it's the closest we could get. All these folks were toxic. Now, I'm not going to, there's multiple things I have here going over this. Children from 1 to 10 years old had markedly increased liver stores with a median value of 1982. Remember, toxicity was 952. The median from children from 1 to 10 years was 1982. And 39 children dying at less than 10 years of age were some unusually high values. Examples, 4,720 and 6,878. So what I'm saying is that, well, first of all, I'm going to show you how vitamin A is related to allergies. But secondly, when we see here that obviously there's a lot of vitamin A in here, I'm going to connect vitamin A to allergies. But then when you see what I'm telling you is 1 to 10 years, they had really high vitamin A values. 60 to 80% of young children with a milk or egg allergy are able to have those foods without a reaction by the time they reach age 16. Their liver grew and it diluted the toxicity. It didn't make the toxicity go away. Their liver just got bigger and spread it out. Now, those of you who understand vitamin A detox, wait, if they put egg or milk into a baked food, what does heat do to vitamin A? It oxidizes it. It sends it down the retinol to retinaldehyde to retinoic acid pathway. So if it is a certain type of vitamin A that causes these allergic reactions, if you oxidize it and send it further down the pathway, you may not have the same reaction. That doesn't mean it doesn't mean it went anywhere. It could cause other problems. You ever traded a disease for one disease for another where you like seem to fix one disease, but then you get another problem? It happens all the time. So now here we go. Some other food allergies are much less likely to be outgrown. These foods are also common allergens and include peanuts, tree nuts, finned fish, and crustacea, shellfish. These tend to cause a more severe food allergy reaction. Only about 20% of children who have a peanut allergy outgrow it. An even lower number of those with tree nut allergies, 14%, will lose that allergy. And only 4 to 5% of children with a fish or crustacean allergy will go on to be able to eat those foods without a reaction later in life. So these are triggering something. My boy he's allergic to tree nuts. His allergist here in town has said she's never seen a kid outgrow tree nuts allergy. So I want to be the first. We've already gotten one of the 3 nuts gone on testing. And knock on wood, never had to use his medicine. So, but yeah, definitely go check out this thread and look for the studies where they specifically go into Oh, and so what did they say were getting all these New Zealand folks sick? So for all you people who love to deny that foods can do it, the findings were ascribed to a liberal intake of butter, a dietary with ample vitamin A and carotene. A dietary, that means their diet, not supplements. And the wide use of medicinal preparations containing or made from fish liver oils, particularly for infants and children. Folks, help your Weston A. Price friends stop poisoning their children. Help them. Show them my work. Show them what I'm going to go over when I show you that Weston Price himself said that cod liver oil can mess up children. I'm going to go over that again. Okay, so now let's go to the next one. So remember in the start when we talked about anaphylaxis and we talked about IgE, right? This is an important paper because it's going to show you the destruction that bile does when it's released in massive amounts and probably when it has a very specific recipe. A role for the hepatobiliary system. This is liver. Hepato means liver. Biliary is bile duct system. Okay, the bile ducts, which is what takes your bile from the liver to the intestines, or it's what can leak into your system. The liver can leak bile. The bile ducts can leak bile. Leaky gut can leak bile. Your stomach can soak up bile and put it right into the blood. Okay. I want you to follow along here because this is really, really, really important. So mast cells are often thought to be like they're your histamine cells. They're thought to be like your allergy cells. I'm trying to simplify this, folks. Okay. To characterize hepatic liver-based mast cells in the rat and to investigate the role of the hepatobiliary system, liver to bile ducts, in a model of IgE-mediated reactivity, so how sensitive, how big it reacts to a dietary trigger, an antigen, okay, whatever triggers it. So they took these Wistar rats, they were passively sensitized, they were made to be anaphylactic with monoclonal antibodies causing, monoclonal antibodies, aren't those good for us? Didn't they use those on Coof? Oh, monoclonal anti-dinitrophenyl DNP IgE antibodies, and were later challenged orogastrically. So they fed them probably by tube with DNP HSA. Listen to this. Additional animals were sensitized. So they made more animals anaphylactic, basically. Then bile duct cannulated. So they put basically like a needle or a tube into their bile duct. That's so they can take bile out or measure bile, see what's in it. Prior to the antigen challenge, here's where we go. This is where it's going to get good. At various time points, liver and intestinal samples were collected for histological examination, and bile was collected and assayed for histamine and tumor necrosis factor alpha, which is a marker of inflammation. Liver hepatic mast cells display a mucosal mast cell-like phenotype and are closely associated with the vessels of the portal triads. That's not that important. Orogastric, so they were feeding tube. Antigen challenge led to a rapid, and significance important, decline in detectable mast cells as a result of anaphylactic degranulation. The median number of granulated mast cells associated with each portal triad in liver sections declined from 6 per portal triad to 1 per portal triad post-antigen challenge. The liver is actually getting destroyed. What do you think's destroying the liver? After 15 minutes, biliary in the bile ducts, histamine concentrations rose above background levels. TNF-alpha was also detectable in the majority of bile samples within 15 minutes of challenge. This is the money part. Histological. So when they looked at it under the microscope, histological examination of the gastrointestinal mucosa, your gut lining, revealed disruption of the villus epithelium, right? The villi are the big thing in celiac. that get destroyed. Disruption of the villus epithelium ranging from edematous, this is like swelling, changes to gross destruction. What does bile do in toxic bile theory? It basically eats away at everything it touches. You're constantly repairing yourself from the damage of bile. They're talking about 15 minutes destroying your gut lining. Do you understand? Now, when we get into all the symptoms of gut stuff in anaphylaxis, you're going to start understanding that this is like bile just destroying everything. But wait, what if there was no bile? Such damage was not seen in animals in which bile had been externally drained. Wait, they sucked the bile out of these animals and they had no damage to their gut. Okay, leaky gut is a bile problem, folks. If you haven't figured that out, you haven't listened to me long enough. Leaky gut is a bile problem. The data indicate that biliary, bile-related products are major contributors to the gastrointestinal damage arising from IgE-mediated hypersensitivity reactions in the rat. And such hypersensitivity reactions may involve a population of mast cells which reside in the liver. Okay, that's just us getting started. Let's go. Come on. Why is this not loading? Oh, come on now. There we go. What happened to my page? That's great. Well, guess we're skipping that one. Joe, I can't close the windows because I gotta save these for all my inner circle people. So I do not know why that just reset, but we'll skip it. Okay. A case of idiopathic anaphylaxis followed by acute liver injury. I want you to understand, folks, what acute liver injury means is liver injury means cholestasis. Cholestasis means bile stagnation or bile leakage into places it's not supposed to be. So like stagnation could happen in the gallbladder where the bile just sits there and it eats away at your gallbladder. It could eat holes through your bile ducts. It could eat holes through your stomach. That's stomach ulcers. It could eat holes through your gut. That's leaky gut. Liver injury is leaky bile. That's what it means. Now, they're going to try to say in this paper that they think anaphylaxis caused the liver injury. But didn't I just show you about the bile, how the bile eats away at everything? So it's probably that there was a liver injury that then caused the anaphylaxis that they just can't figure out what caused it. I don't know how people can stand to be so incompetent at their jobs. Idiopathic anaphylaxis is characterized by recurrent anaphylaxis without a known trigger. So I guess that means there's something else causing anaphylaxis that they don't understand. It's not just allergies. An unusual case involving repeated episodes of anaphylactic shock accompanied by acute liver injury. So they're saying they came together accompanied by the chicken or the egg, right? Is described here. A 36-year-old woman who experienced anaphylaxis due to an unknown cause was referred to our hospital because of marked elevations in her liver enzyme levels. Repeated anaphylaxis, marked elevations in her liver enzyme levels. Her liver's not doing well, folks. Did we just talk about mast cells in the liver and all that stuff? So they excluded they excluded acute liver injury. They excluded viral infections, which is just toxicity. They excluded drug use, and they excluded autoimmune hepatitis, which is just toxicity. Wow, they couldn't find toxicity. Imagine modern medicine not being able to find toxicity. The episodes were accompanied by elevated liver enzymes, which suggested that this was a case of anaphylaxis caused or followed by acute liver injury. The patient will have to use self-injectable epinephrine to prevent future hepatic failure. It's rooted in the liver, folks. Let's keep going. We got lots of these. Spontaneous abdominal effusion. Let me just get the definition of this for everybody so we know what it all means together. It's the escape of fluid from anatomical vessels By rupture or exudation. The escape of bile from your intestines, your bile ducts, your stomach, your liver cells. The escape of bile from anatomical vessels by rupture. If bile all of a sudden ruptured its pathway and leaked into the system in huge amounts, do you think that could cause a giant systemic reaction that might kill you? Anyway, so let's keep going. Spontaneous, sudden, all of a sudden, abdominal swelling in dogs with presumed anaphylaxis. 16 dogs presenting to the emergency department for clinical signs suggestive of anaphylaxis with peritoneal effusion. So they're having a bunch of swelling and leaking of stuff down in their gut. Dogs presented with clinical signs of anaphylaxis, including vomiting. Well, what do we do with bile in our stomach? We vomit it. Diarrhea. What happens when there's too much bile in our intestines? You get diarrhea. Abdominal effusion should be considered a potential sequelae of anaphylaxis in dogs. Do you remember in that last paper, the paper we were going over, where the bile basically completely destroyed the gut? Do you think there would be swelling and leakage of things if the bile was completely destroying the gut? So let's keep going. Elevation of alanine transaminase. This is a liver enzyme, ALT, and gallbladder wall abnormalities. Goodness. The gallbladder is part of the bile system, isn't it? Gallbladder wall abnormalities. Maybe could it leak all of a sudden, or maybe it's had a history of leaking, blowing out holes, scar tissue over it. So let's do this one too. Getting these links for you guys. So they're saying, they're saying liver problems and bile pathway problems as biomarkers, ways that you could find potentially before it happens, anaphylaxis in canine hypersensitivity patients. Purpose of the study was to evaluate alanine transaminase, ALT, and gallbladder wall abnormalities as possible biomarkers for anaphylaxis in dogs presented for acute hypersensitivity reactions. Dogs were then divided into two groups: dogs fulfilling the definition for anaphylaxis, moderate and severe systemic hypersensitivity, and dogs that did not fulfill the definition and were classified as allergic reactions, local hypersensitivity, and mild systemic hypersensitivity. So they're just going on a scale. It's the same process. They're just going on a scale. Elevated ALT was significantly associated with anaphylaxis. Increased gallbladder wall thickness. Why would the gallbladder wall get thicker? And a striated wall pattern were significantly associated with anaphylaxis, and these changes were readily apparent to first responder veterinarians. Wow, it's like a pattern. So what might make the gallbladder wall thicker? What if the bile was particularly toxic and it actually changed the wall pattern? What if it's like a scar tissue because the gallbladder has kind of burst before? Who knows? But we're just seeing the patterns again. This study showed an elevated ALT and an abnormal gallbladder wall to be biomarkers significantly associated with anaphylaxis in dogs with acute hypersensitivity reactions. Let's just go define biomarker so everybody understands how important this is. A specific physical trait used to measure or indicate the effects of a progress or a disease or condition. Okay. Now, we're going to get into this too, because sepsis is something, septic shock, sepsis is another form of bile leaking into the system. So what if we found lots of similarities between septic shock, sepsis, and anaphylaxis. Wouldn't that be interesting if it was the same cause of both of them? And then you figure out why modern medicine can't figure out any of this stuff because they don't talk about bile and they don't understand bile at all. I don't know. Let's see what we find. I think I know what we're going to find. Comparison of clinical findings between dogs with suspected anaphylaxis and dogs with confirmed sepsis. Dogs in both groups had gastrointestinal signs. So now this is an interesting thing. So is it a little different? When we see different patterns of disease, we see different bile recipes, but you could still have leaky bile causing related problems. So dogs with suspected anaphylaxis had a significantly higher eosinophil count and ALT again, and lower blood pH than dogs with sepsis. Dogs with sepsis had a significantly higher band neutrophil count, serum globulins concentration, and serum alk phos activity, and lower blood glucose. Okay, so they're different. Dogs in both groups had intracavitary free fluid. They're leaking fluid into their intestines, into their gut. Ultrasound found thickened intestines. Well, wait, what happens when you constantly assault a tissue? Does it get thicker? Generally, yeah, because your body's trying to rebuild it so it doesn't break. Gas or fluid-filled intestines and a thickened gallbladder wall. Wait, so both groups, eh? Sepsis and anaphylactic. Huh. What a weird coincidence. Let's keep going. Distributive shock in the emergency department. Sepsis, anaphylaxis. They're having trouble recognizing it. Sorry, I want to get the link here. I know Joe's just telling me about the links. I think I got all the links, Joe. I'll just put them here anyway. Let's go two back. Okay. Distributive shock in the emergency department. Sepsis, anaphylaxis, or capillary leak syndrome. So wait, we got three conditions now that they're seeming to have trouble distinguishing between. Capillary leak, toxic bile eats holes in things. If you get toxic bile in your blood, do you think it could attack your tiniest blood vessels called capillaries? So this is a case of a 30-year-old female. Her physical examination revealed mild edema and rebound tenderness. So when they push down on something and then they let it go, and then when you let it go and it hurts, that's rebound tenderness, okay? In the right upper quadrant, do you know what's in your right upper quadrant of your abdomen? Like if you divided your abdomen into 4 areas, the right upper quadrant. That's where your liver is. Rebound tenderness there, huh? CT scan showed pneumonic, so lung-related infiltrates in the lower zone of the right lung, an enlarged liver, a thickened gallbladder wall, and an extensive amount of free fluid in the parahepatic around the liver and retroperitoneal behind the peritoneum areas. So, sounds like sepsis, sounds like anaphylaxis, sounds like a liver problem, tenderness on the liver and in the intestines. She was tender in the bilateral lower quadrants, so the lower end of the intestines were tender too. Liver was tender. She's got a big liver, thickened gallbladder wall. Then they can't figure out what it is because it's just toxic leaky bile presenting in different ways. Let's go some more. Chlorhexidine anaphylaxis. So chlorhexidine is often what they use in hospitals to clean things. Anaphylaxis masquerading as septic shock. Why do these things look so similar? What if the cause of them was all the same root cause? In recent years, adverse reactions to chlorhexidine ranging from allergic contact dermatitis, photosensitivity, well, that's a vitamin A toxicity symptom, and a nicotinic acid niacin deficiency symptom, fixed drug eruptions, urticaria, a rash, and anaphylactic shock have been reported. Most have been isolated case reports on adverse reactions occurring in healthy individuals or healthcare workers. HCW is healthcare workers. We report a case of anaphylactic shock caused by applying chlorhexidine cleansing solution and masquerading as septic shock from left leg necrotizing fasciitis. Anaphylactic shock masquerading as septic shock. Let's keep going. Come on, reset. Anaphylaxis. Let me copy this and make it a little bigger. Wait, what did I just do? Okay, let's undo that. Oh my goodness. I just made a new tab, I think. This. Yes. Okay, good. I just made a new tab. No big deal. There we go. So, oh goodness. Wrong button. Okay. There we go. I can do it. I'm a big boy. Anaphylaxis as an initial manifestation of cholangiocarcinoma. So let's just go and define this. So we all have the same definition of it. Cholangiocarcinoma. When you see the word col, you should think bile or bile duct. Okay. Cancer of the bile duct. Wait. Cancer of the bile duct would tend to do what to the flow of bile? Oh, it might block it. If you block the flow of bile, what happens? It builds up. It builds up pressure. It blows out the tubes that it's in. What are we trying to say here that anaphylaxis probably is? It's a blowout of bile into the system. That'd be weird that this could cause. Anaphylaxis is an initial manifestation of cholangiocarcinoma of bile duct cancer. A 57-year-old female was admitted to hospital after developing angioedema, that's swelling, urticaria is a rash, wheezing, breathing problems, and hypotension, low blood pressure. Immediate treatment, look at all they gave her. Immediate treatment included adrenaline, that's epinephrine, chlorpheniramine, ranitidine, this is a stomach acid blocker, dexamethasone, this is corticosteroid, and intubation. During admission, she developed urticarial skin rash after almost every meal. Hey, folks, what happens when you eat? What does your body do with bile? Oh, it pumps out bile. If you were leaking bile and you leaked it into your blood and it comes out through your skin, you get a rash. Every time she ate, she got a rash. Didn't matter what she ate. It was the act of eating that caused her rash because it's a bile problem. There was no rash if she was starving. I believe they mean fasting. Specific IgE to aeroallergens, allergens in the air, and food were all negative. After 1 week of investigation for the cause of anaphylaxis, she developed progressive jaundice. Why do we get jaundice? Oh, we're leaking bilirubin into the blood and it's accumulating in the skin. She was having rashes after every meal. She's accumulating jaundice, bilirubin in her skin. So then they finally look at her liver. What they found was they did find bile cytology demonstrated these eggs, probably parasite eggs. She had 2 times of ascending cholangitis, that's ear inflammation of the bile ducts, and died 4 months after her diagnosis. So, this is the first case report of this parasite inducing both cholangiocarcinoma, so bile duct cancer, and IgE-mediated anaphylaxis. It's bile. It's blocking the bile ducts. We'll go over more stuff that relates to this. We're just going to keep connecting sepsis to this too. Hyperbilirubinemia, high bilirubin in the blood in a patient with sepsis, a diagnostic challenge. Let's take a second to pay real close attention to this first statement. Cholestasis, toxic leaky bile, due to sepsis. Or what if it's sepsis due to cholestasis? Is commonly seen in critically ill patients. However, it is often overlooked. Isn't this what we're trying to do here? And poses a challenge in clinical diagnosis and management. Sepsis should always be considered as part of the differential diagnosis while managing a patient with jaundice. Wait, cholestasis due to sepsis, sepsis and jaundice. Do we not understand now what connects all these? It's bile leaking into your blood. Okay. I did that last one, right, Joe? Didn't I do this one? Hold on, my chat's not keeping up. Anyway, I'll put it again. I don't remember if I did it or not. Okay. The specific bile acid profile of shock. Wait, so Dr. Smith, you always talk about that the specific bile recipe or composition is part of what causes diseases to present in a specific way. And this is how, when you take things, that they adjust the bile recipe, you can make a disease worse or you can make a disease better. The specific bile acid profile of shock, a hypothesis generating appraisal of the literature. Bile acid synthesis and regulation of metabolism are tightly regulated. Well, I'd have to say maybe they're not so right there. In critical illness, these regulations are impaired. Maybe in moderate and mild illness, these regulations are also impaired. Consequently, the physiologic bile acid pattern in serum in the blood becomes disturbed, and a disease-specific bile acid profile seems to become evident. You're not really supposed to have much bile in your blood, folks. Bile is supposed to go from your liver to your bile ducts to your intestine and either get pooped out or reabsorbed in the closed system of the enterohepatic gut to liver circulation and go right back to the liver, where the liver then filters it out again, makes it into bile, and it goes through that loop. It's called the enterohepatic circulation. This is not connected to your other blood vessels that go, the peripheral blood circulation. So they're saying the physiologic bile acid pattern in serum in your blood becomes disturbed. Well, of course, you're not supposed to have it there anyway. So yes, it's disturbed. And a disease specific. So they're saying they can identify patterns in the bile, in the blood, and it becomes evident. Most of the studied bile acid profiles differ statistically significant between disease states. Furthermore, neither of the reported disease entities show the same broken down pattern of individual bile acids. This shows how little they know. Deoxycholic acid was found to be decreased in almost all diseases, except for the two shock states investigated: cardiogenic shock, septic shock, where it was elevated by about 100% compared to the control. Moreover, the pattern of both examined shock states are very similar, rendering a specific shock pattern possible that we argue could eventually maintain or even worsen the pathological state. Wild. Pathophysiology of sepsis-induced cholestasis. I'm going to tell you, it's the other way around. Cholestasis-induced sepsis, but we're going to keep, this is what we got. One of the many possible complications of sepsis is liver dysfunction with consequent cholestasis. But what if the cholestasis has been going on for years and slowly getting worse and slowly getting worse and worse and worse, and you have other diseases happening, and then all of a sudden you have catastrophic failure of the bile duct pathways and you start leaking tons of bile into the system? Then you could have sepsis, you could have anaphylactic shock, you could have all sorts of things. Cholestasis in a septic patient must raise the suspicion that it is the consequence of the septic condition and limits the laborious attempts of finding a hepatic liver-based or bile duct disease. Limit the laborious attempts. They're just not even going to bother to try to find it. I don't understand this sentence very well. Cholestasis is a syndrome with a variety of etiologies, among which sepsis is frequently overlooked. Gosh, they keep overlooking bile. Why do they do that? Despite a number of studies and case reports in the literature demonstrating not only the association between sepsis and cholestasis, but also the role of cholestasis. Wait. Let's just go over this. The role of cholestasis as a prognostic, basically a predictive factor for sepsis-induced death. Remember how close sepsis was to anaphylaxis? They were having trouble distinguishing. So that's only the first round of tabs, but it does get faster here. So, bile and anaphylaxis. I couldn't find this paper anywhere. It was published in 2 journals. This is the same paper, same author. Let me see. Kadlubowski, and then we have Kadlubowski. Same guy. I could not find this paper. So if any of you out there are into, obtaining papers, I'm not trying to get anybody to pay for this, but if you want to go and try to find either of these papers, the effect of bile and bile acids on experimental anaphylaxis and allergic diseases, or the effect of bile and biliary acid on experimental anaphylaxis and allergic diseases. They're in different journals. 1955. Wow, they knew about this back in 1955. Huh. Interesting. Conjugated bile. Oh, wait, I don't want that one. I want that. Conjugated bile acids. Bile acids bound to something. Trusty Rusty, I do not answer questions on the compounds known as CDS or MMS on public forums. Thank you for the super chat, but I do not address those in public. I only address those within the Love Your Liver program. So, yeah, there's a whole section in the Love Your Liver program where those are discussed. So, conjugated bile acids bound to things like taurine or glycine. No problem, Trusty Rusty. I just need to let you know that. I'm sorry you did the super chat. So, just to hear me say that. Conjugated bile acids attenuate allergen-induced airway inflammation and hyperresponsiveness by inhibiting UPR transducers. So do you remember how I said that changing the bile recipe can change the disease? Right? Isn't that this? So what if they use different bile and bile acids on anaphylaxis? Oh, they found something that reduces it. It's not that you can change the disease presentation by changing the bile. Okay. Now, I'm going to go over this. And I am not suggesting you go and you take bile acids trying to fix a problem. You don't fix a leaky bile problem by taking bile acids. Okay. You do not fix a bile problem by taking bile. You're already leaking it. So, they used a house dust mite induced, murine means mice, model of asthma to evaluate and compare the effects of 5 conjugated bile acids and 1 unconjugated bile acid in attenuating or reducing allergen-induced UPR, which was, UPR was unfolded protein response. Where was it? allergen-induced unfolded protein response, and airway responses. So asthma, obviously asthma, allergy, anaphylaxis. Anaphylaxis is just like a super intense version of almost like an allergic asthmatic reaction where they can't breathe, okay? Just because medicine makes all these different diagnoses does not mean they're coming from a different source. Collectively, these results demonstrate that conjugated bile acid-based therapy potently inhibits the allergen-induced unfolded protein response and allergic airway disease in mice. They're treating a bile problem by changing the bile recipe. That's it. It's showing you that the bile recipe has a huge impact here. It doesn't mean that you just going and taking tons of glycine and tons of taurine is going to fix your problem either. You can do that. If you try glycine and you feel better on it, great. Take it. If you try taurine and you feel better on it, go ahead, take it. You are changing the bile recipe. But if you're doing the love your liver approach, I need to warn you. So think about it. If you have a bad bile recipe at the beginning and you take something, let's say taurine, to change your bile recipe, you're putting in a bunch of taurine, which can then conjugate to the bile acids, and it changes your bile recipe, and you feel better. Well, if you are doing the love your liver approach over time, your bile acid recipe is going to improve. And as it improves, continuing to hammer it with taurine will actually make your bile acid recipe worse. So it is up to people when they are taking glycine or taurine. I tell them at some point it will turn on you. I've seen it so many times. At some point it will turn on you. And then you'll feel worse from it. And then when you stop it, you'll feel better. I've seen it over and over and over and over again. The people who think glycine is going to save the world, I'm like, yeah, you got messed up bile. They're like, oh my gosh, I take 8 grams a day and it fixes all my problems. I'm like, yeah, you just conjugated all your bile with glycine. That's cool. I'm glad you feel better. But just know that the root cause of the problem is not a glycine deficiency. It's that your bile recipe is bad and you just changed it with glycine. The role of bile acids in food allergy and responses to oral immunotherapy by metabolomic profiling. Now, I want you to understand, oral immunotherapy means they're going to give, let's say they have an allergic child. They're going to start giving that child the teeniest doses of the food. They're going to have them like in the allergist's office. They're going to sit them down. They're going to have them right next to a crash cart, EpiPen. You know, I think they have a defibrillator on it. Like they've got everything on it. Like they're ready for the child to basically have a life-threatening anaphylactic reaction. And they give the child the tiniest bit. And if the child has no reaction or a very, very small reaction, I don't know what the standard is on the reaction in terms of continuing this process. But over time, just like when you lift weights at first, it's painful and you get really sore. But as you go back to the gym over time, you stop getting so sore, right? This is the same thing with oral immunotherapy. They're giving a teeny tiny bit. The body says, well, this is all right. I could deal with this. So then the next time they give them a little more. And the next time they give them a little more until they can eat a serving of what they call a serving of the food in the allergist's office without going into anaphylaxis. And then they consider them to have cured the allergy. They trained the system. They did exposure therapy. That's all it is. This is modern medicine's best approach to allergies is exposure therapy. That's it. So here we go. Prior work suggested an association between bile acid pathways and IgE-mediated food allergy. So remember, what modulates, what runs anaphylaxis? IgE. Bile acid pathways and IgE-mediated food allergy. Early data has implicated bile acids, specifically glycolithocolates, in promoting T regulatory cells differentiation. A very specific bile acid with glycine on it. It's also related to lithocolic acid, So a glycine-bound lithocholic acid, particularly during oral immunotherapy. I just wanted to do the OIT so you know the abbreviation. And they talk about sustained unresponsiveness, which is like, okay, so I believe what they're saying sustained unresponsiveness is, SD is not like curing them of not reacting to the food for a very long time. Okay, versus transient desensitization where they like get a little better for a bit, but it goes away. Okay, so they're talking about like a fix versus a little bit of improvement for a bit that goes away. Okay. In particular, sustained unresponsiveness, the people who were more cured subjects had higher glycolithocholate levels than transient desensitization than the temporary folks at baseline and early buildup, but they converged. They came towards the same number over time on oral immunotherapy as they're suggesting that their allergy reactions got less. Their bile started to look more similar. Weird, right? These findings support an association between altered bile acid pathways and food allergy. Given literature implicating a role for glycolithocolates in promoting Tregs and the potential role of Tregs in tolerance, our works identifying increased glycolithocolate in sustained unresponsiveness. Well, wait, is sustained unresponsive? Okay, wait. I'm wondering if sustained unresponsiveness means they're not responding to the treatment. That might be they're not responding to the treatment. I may have assumed incorrectly. But anyway, so our work identifying increased glycolithocolate in sustained unresponsiveness patients suggests a novel hypothesis to explain the development of sustained unresponsiveness on oral immunotherapy. I could be wrong. I could have the sustained unresponsiveness wrong. I didn't go and validate that, but what they're saying, bile acids are connected to the condition. That's what we're interested in. So continuing on. Is abnormal liver function correlated with food sensitization, which is anaphylaxis at its core, right? Anaphylaxis is just super food sensitization in adults. So children, association between liver function and serum IgE levels have recently been observed in children. Okay. Wow, so they're connecting IgE yet again. What did they find here? Abnormal gamma glutamyl transpeptidase, which is GGT, which is a liver enzyme, was significantly associated with food sensitization. So another liver problem associated with allergies. Oh, here we go. Moreover, both abnormal albumin and ALT were associated with egg sensitization. For all you egg cells, thinking that the vitamin A in eggs and the choline is not just going straight into your liver, you're wrong. You're storing so much in your liver. Conclusion. Abnormal liver status tests were correlated with blood food-specific IgE, allergy and anaphylaxis concentrations in adults. Well, there you go again. Untargeted metabolomic profiling identifies disease-specific profiles in food allergy. Wait, profiles like composition, like recipe? So food allergy is FA. Mass spectrometry-based untargeted metabolomic profiling was performed on serum samples of children with either food allergy alone, asthma alone, or both food allergy and asthma, as well as healthy pediatric children controls. Now we've talked about how does your gut biome make bile more toxic? Your gut biome turns primary bile acids into secondary bile acids. Secondary bile acids are the most toxic of the bile acids in general. TUDCA is a secondary bile acid. UDCA is a secondary bile acid. We don't use these. If you're using them to relieve some symptoms, just realize that's all you're doing is relieving symptoms. You're not fixing the problem at all. Adam, I do not recommend sprouted oats Sprouting or germinating is when plants start making more carotenoids. Go look up germinating and carotenoids, and you'll find. Here, I can do it right now. Find it. Maybe I have to go to PubMed. It's not hard to find. Germination is when plants start making carotenoids. Why am I not finding it right now? Maybe I need to look up germination. Let's do that. I found this before. I don't know why I'm not finding it right now. I'm not spending more time on this. I've had it before. I've posted it in the Love Your Liver program. So anyway, your gut biome can make your toxic bile more toxic. Specific comparison of food allergy and asthmatic subjects revealed differences in the microbiota sensitive aromatic amino acid and secondary bile acid metabolism. Children with both food allergy and asthma exhibited a metabolomic profile that aligned with that of food allergy alone, but not asthma. Oh, wait, their bile. This was what they were probably doing was they weren't looking at all the bile acids to set these apart, because they could likely, if they measure enough bile acids, like I want you to understand testing of bile acids. Like when I want to test blood bile acids through LabCorp, I can get 6 bile acids tested individually. That's it. 6. I've seen papers saying there are 55 different bile acids in the human body that have been discovered. Oh, and then they found a very unique bile acid in neonatal newborn septic shock. They found a bile acid they'd never found before. Weird that they'd find a totally new bile acid in septic shock. So they probably just didn't look at enough bile acids to make a distinction. Among children with food allergy, distinct profiles were associated with history of severe reactions. Distinct profiles, recipes, composition were associated with a history of severe reactions and presence of multiple food allergies. Children with food allergies display a disease-specific metabolomic profile that is informative of disease mechanisms and severity. Metabolomic alterations observed in food allergy children may reflect the interplay between an altered microbiome, which changes the toxic bile that goes to it, and immune cell subsets in the gut. Oh, you mean like mast cells in the liver and in the gut? Remember, the liver is part of the gut because it's connected to the bile duct. So remember that. Remember what we showed earlier about how the bile that was dumped ate away at the gut. Gross destruction of the villi. And now you're starting to understand celiac. Celiac is toxicity, and gluten is the trigger for the bile dump. So let's keep going. We're gonna get faster here. Malandialdehyde. I talk about malandialdehyde a lot. People who are PUFA obsessors. It's cool. PUFAs are not good for you, but you can't avoid them completely. And I've seen lots of people who they thought avoiding PUFAs was going to fix everything in their health, and it didn't. It may have gotten them a bit healthier, but it doesn't fix everything. PUFAs are not the be-all, end-all of problems with our food supply. You want to know what we do here in the Love Your Liver program is we generally try to minimize added fats. Minimize added fats. What does that do to your intake of seed oils and soybean oil and all sorts of other garbage? Well, you're minimizing your intake of added fats, and all those are added fats. So all of a sudden, you've minimized your additional PUFA intake. If you want to go so far as to never having the joy of eating any chicken skin again, that's up to you. I'm not going to go that far. Chicken skin's pretty good. don't eat much of it, but it's not bad to have it on like a drumstick or something like that. So anyway, malondialdehyde is a potential oxidative stress marker for allergy-oriented diseases. So what do we talk a lot about here? We talk about ALDH, aldehyde dehydrogenase. Aldehyde dehydrogenase is the enzyme pathway that breaks down aldehydes for the most part. Aldehyde dehydrogenase breaks down malondialdehyde. But malondialdehyde, we've shown the research, malondialdehyde itself actually slows down ALDH. So the very toxin that needs to be detoxed slows down the detox pathway that detoxes it. Do you see how dangerous this gets? Where does malondialdehyde come from that no one in the PUFA world talks about? Why do people in the PUFA world never talk about where it comes from? Why don't they ever talk about malondialdehyde? Malondialdehyde is a compound that is derived from the peroxidation, the oxidation of PUFAs. People are just like, PUFAs are bad. And I'm like, I know why they're bad. I know exactly why they're bad. Because they're aldehydes. So malondialdehyde slows down your ALDH. Aldehydes cause all sorts of problems in the body. When you are not running your ALDH well, you build up aldehydes. When your ALDH is not running well, your bile production and excretion sucks, and you tend to get more cholestasis or toxic leaky bile. So, according to the literature review, the oxidative stress status in asthmatic patients assessed via malondialdehyde determination appears to worsen in the presence of other allergic airway diseases. Wait, so it gets worse when there's more diseases when it's worse. They have the order wrong. They always say the order is wrong. And in relation to the disease severity, this suggests that malondialdehyde can be a suitable marker for monitoring the disease status. Wow, there's all these things that they could monitor to tell you your risk for anaphylaxis, your risk for sepsis, your risk for disease status in asthma and food allergies. Why don't they measure any of these? Weird. It's almost like they don't want to find it. So now we're going to go over vitamin A and allergies. I've gone over this before, but we're going to go over this again. And for those of you who would make the unscientifically supported argument that natural vitamin A and synthetic vitamin A are somehow functionally different, even though they have the exact same structure and scientists would use the exact same process to identify the exact same compounds. So the very way that they would analyze a food where you go, oh, this food is good for you because it's got lots of vitamin A, is the exact same chemical method that they would use to identify that they made the right vitamin A in the laboratory. And so they are exactly the same compounds, but you're going to say that they somehow function differently in the body. You're completely wrong. And there is no science to back up what you're saying. Vitamin A is vitamin A is vitamin A. The different forms have been shown to be equally as toxic when given to animals in the same doses, whether it's natural or synthetic. So please stop using the completely unscientific. I'm not even going to give it the honor of calling it pseudoscientific. That would be like impersonating science. It's just unscientific. There's no basis to it where people say that food vitamin A is somehow safe and good for you and synthetic is totally bad for you. No, it's all bad for you. Okay? So this is my old research forum. I'm sure Joe's going to tell me to zoom it. So we're going to run through these. These are old posts of mine. So not everything in this forum. This look at when this post was. 2019. Don't you wish you would have heard about this in 2019? We have twice demonstrated that high-dose vitamin A supplementation given to newborn girls in Guinea-Bissau increases wheeze and atopic, that's allergic sensitization to air-based allergens later in childhood. Oh, so the more vitamin A they got, the more allergic they were. Have you ever noticed, folks, that like the Weston Price kids are like the most allergic kids ever, and that's why they have to do the GAPS diet and they have to do all this stuff? The food-based vitamin A doesn't save them. The failure of vitamin A supplementation to protect against allergic disease, atopy, and indeed to promote sensitization in Guinean girls leaves a disparity between the clinical and laboratory findings that needs to be resolved. So what they're saying is we measure their blood vitamin A, and their blood vitamin A is low. So, but then when we give them vitamin A, they get more disease. When you do, so let me tell you, in Guinea-Bissau, what do you think the kids are probably not eating a lot of that I say you need to have these things to get vitamin A out of your liver, which would then show up in the blood. But if you don't have these things, it doesn't come out of your liver and it doesn't show up in the blood. And these children are falsely diagnosed with low vitamin A. Okay, you have to understand this. Children in Guinea-Bissau are probably not getting a lot of, their parents and them are not getting much meat, red meat particularly. They are not getting much zinc because they don't get much meat and they sure aren't supplementing it. And they're not getting much taurine because taurine is found only in muscle meat. Regardless of what you read on the internet, there is no taurine in eggs. There is no taurine in dairy. I've done a lot of research on this. They'll say there is. It's not. When you really look into the research, there is no taurine in eggs. There is no taurine in dairy. So these kids are not getting enough protein. It has been shown, I've shown this, that if you get, let me get the Twitter thread so you can read it. My vitamin A deficiency doesn't exist thread. When you go through this, you'll see that simply giving children or people who are starved protein, like meat, would raise their vitamin A levels in their blood, but they weren't taking vitamin A. Giving these malnourished people zinc will raise the vitamin A in their blood. Weird. Zinc and protein are not vitamin A, but they would raise it in the blood. So this would explain how they're giving these children are actually vitamin A toxic in their liver already. It's not coming out because they don't get enough protein. They don't get enough zinc. Their body can't get rid of it. So it's stuck in their liver. And then you have these brilliant researchers and scientists and medical people going, your blood vitamin A is low. We should give you more of this and make you more diseased. But we don't understand why these things don't line up. Do I care if the clinical and laboratory findings line up? No, I just want people to get better. I don't care what their vitamin A blood test says because the blood does not tell you anything about vitamin A. So when people come here in the chat or on Twitter or whatever, they're like, what should my blood test be? I'm like, I don't really. You can earn a low vitamin A blood test over time by avoiding it. But at the start, sometimes the sickest people who come to me have the lowest vitamin A. And as we get them healthier, their vitamin A actually goes up, even though they're not eating it. Do you understand where that's coming from? It's coming out of their liver. It was stuck. So this paper had 2 studies in it. Here's one of them. Vitamin A supplementation and BCG vaccination at birth may affect atopy, allergic diseases in childhood. Vitamin A supplementation was associated with increased atopy, allergic disease, especially in those who got a vaccine. They damaged their liver, which makes them more susceptible to toxicity. Vitamin A supplementation increased odds of wheeze within the past 12 months. Newborn vitamin A supplementation was associated with increased allergic disease. Neonatal newborn vitamin A supplementation associated with increased atopy in girls. Neonatal vitamin A supplementation was associated with increased risk of atopy and wheezing in this study only among females. Further studies are warranted. So there's that. Now, asthma and allergy in children. Remember, these are all related. They're just slightly different presentations. So when they give kids multivitamins, do I ever use multivitamins, folks? No, the only thing that's close to a multivitamin I would use is Keystone Minerals. Early infant multivitamin supplementation is associated with an increased risk for food allergy and asthma. Well, what does What do multivitamins have in them? Vitamin A, vitamin D, toxic copper, toxic manganese, toxic B6, all the other BS crap that they add to it. I'm sure this might even be Bill Gates' multivitamin that he was giving prenatals to women in Africa and stuff like that. And then they were giving them to kids through the vitamin angels. Bill Gates loves vitamin A, and Bill Gates supports the vitamin angels. Conclusions. So all of us who got Flintstones as a child, including myself, or other multivitamins, early vitamin supplementation is associated with an increased risk for asthma in Black children and food allergies in exclusively formula-fed children because they add more vitamins to formula. Additional study is warranted to examine which components most strongly contribute to this risk. Well, I can tell you that. Effects of early intake of fruit or vegetables in a relationship to later asthma and allergic sensitization in school-age children. Allergic sensitization at school age seemed to increase with extra vitamin supplementation and cod liver oil supplements during infancy. So yes, you may have caused your child's allergies. I probably did. I probably caused my own son's anaphylactic tree nut allergy by poisoning. My ex was totally toxic in vitamin A and copper, and I gave him goat milk, which is some people say goat milk is 4 times higher than cow's milk in vitamin A. And I thought I was doing the back then. I thought I was into the normal health food nuttery, and I thought, oh, goat milk's so much better for us than cow milk because the fat globules are smaller and whatever. I believed all the bullshit. I've been duped before. Don't get me wrong. I've been duped. I'm here to help you get unduped because I've already made the mistakes for you. This is why I'm actually passionate about helping those who follow Ray Peat, because I made that mistake. I've already been there. I've already done that. So many of the people in the program have already been there and done it. So the role of latitude, ultraviolet radiation exposure, and vitamin D in childhood asthma and hay fever, an Australian multi-center study. What happens when they gave children vitamin D? Well, oral supplementation with cod liver oil in childhood increases the odds of a history of having both asthma and hay fever. Weston Pricers, you need help. You need to not do this to your children. Vitamin A and D intake in pregnancy, infant supplementation, and asthma development, the Norwegian mother and child cohort. Western diets may provide excess vitamin A, which is potentially toxic and could adversely affect respiratory health. You mean like asthma, allergy, anaphylaxis? Let me skip ahead. Asthma increased according to maternal intake of total vitamin A in the highest compared with the lowest quintile. They divided into 5 sections. During pregnancy, excess vitamin A greater than 2.5 times the recommended intake during pregnancy was associated with increased risk of asthma in the children at 7 years old. I want you to understand, 7 years old. Too much vitamin A in pregnancy set up these kids for asthma when they were 7 years old still. This doesn't just go away. Excess vitamin A. Oh, wait. Although vitamin A is mainly stored in the liver, excess vitamin A also accumulates. That's the key word, folks. Whenever somebody says it doesn't store it, you use the word accumulate. Excess vitamin A also accumulates in the lung, where retinoid metabolites may cause asthma-like symptoms. In the rat lung, vitamin A supplementation with higher and intermediate doses increases markers of oxidative stress. One of those is malondialdehyde, which may also impair lung function. We found no indication that antioxidant properties of beta-carotene protect against asthma. The effect of beta-carotene was weaker, but in the same direction as retinol, vitamin A making asthma and allergies worse, is basically what they're saying. In this study, we found that a diet naturally high in vitamin A, combined with the use of supplements containing retinol during pregnancy placed women at risk of vitamin A excess which was associated with increased susceptibility to asthma in school-age children. We observed this effect for intakes that were greater than 2.5 times the recommended dose. Oh, you Weston Price people and you paleo people eating your sweet potatoes and your carrots and your spinach and your arugula and all, you are way up there, which is below the tolerable upper intake for retinol of 3,000 micrograms per day during pregnancy. So, I don't think there's anything else in this one other than my explanation. Nope, we're good on that one. And so let's go into adults, right? We did children. Now let's go into adults, asthma in adults. Relationship of fish liver intake, fish and cod oil intake. I believe they're either talking about fish oil or fish liver oil and cod oil, because that's usually cod liver oil, right? Intake with adult asthma. Adult consumption of cod oil had a U-shaped association with asthma, with the highest risks in those taking cod liver oil never and daily. Sorry, let me get this link for you. I'm not worried about the never. Cod liver oil intake and incidence of asthma in Norwegian adults. Another one. So they're doing this in Norwegians, right? The people who supposedly, I mean, I'm 97.5% like Northern European. So Norwegians are my people. I'm not touching this stuff. This is in Norway. This is where cod liver oil like almost practically comes from. Before 1999, the cod liver oil formula in Norway contained a high concentration of vitamin A, high vitamin A status. So when they say high vitamin A status, do they mean blood tests? Is associated with increased risks of several chronic diseases. Cod liver oil intake was defined as daily intake for greater than or equal to 1 month during the year prior to baseline. Incident asthma was reported as new onset asthma during the 11-year follow-up. Cod liver oil intake was significantly associated with incident asthma with an odds ratio of 1.62 after adjustment for age, sex, daily smoking, physical activity, education, socioeconomic status, family history of asthma, and body mass index. The positive association was consistent across age, sex, family history of asthma, and BMI subgroups. Intake of cod liver oil with high vitamin A content was significantly associated with the increased incidence of adult onset asthma. So, let's just keep going here. Intake of multivitamin supplements and incident asthma in Norwegian adults. Regular intake of multivitamin supplements or cod liver oil was defined as daily intake for greater than or equal to 3 months during the year prior to baseline. Incident asthma, well, they have those definitions. You can read those. I'm not going to keep reading. Intake of multivitamin supplements only was associated with an increased odds ratio for incident asthma. So more multivitamins, more asthma. Similar odds ratios were found for intake of cod liver oil only and for the intake of both supplements. Don't take cod liver oil. Don't take multivitamins. Garbage. So now what I wanted to go over here, again, so if I can show that cod liver oil, which contains high amounts of vitamin A and vitamin D, first of all, we don't ever take vitamin D around here. Vitamin D is rat poison. You do not try to eat vitamin D. You do not take rat poison vitamin D pills, which is exactly the same stuff they make into the rat poison sold for rodenticide as Tera D3, TERAD3. And the other one is D-Con, D-Con. They sell rat poison, vitamin D, in blocks as rat poison, and it sends cats and dogs regularly to the veterinarian with kidney failure. Yes, it could kill you. Yes, it could kill your baby if they found it and they started eating it on the floor. But cod liver oil by itself, which is supposed to be healthy, has enough problems. But let's go over cod liver oil with allergies in children. This is my cod liver oil thread. I believe this is the main post. So the first study, English cities in 1880 were characterized by extremely high rickets prevalence, the beginning of commercial cod liver oil production, and the near absence of any allergic diseases. So 144 years ago in Britain, there were almost no allergic diseases. Do you understand that this means that allergic diseases are an environmental problem caused most likely by toxicities and deficiencies then? By 1930, so 50 years later, hay fever prevalence had risen to about 3% in English-speaking countries where cod liver oil was preferentially used for the treatment of rickets. In 1980, vitamin D was used nationwide in all industrialized countries as a supplement to industrial baby food. So they give rat poison together with industrial baby food, thus eradicating nearly all cases of rickets. At the same time, the allergy prevalence reached an all-time high, affecting about 30% of the population. So it went from 0 to 30% of the population in 100 years. Here's another link. Allergic sensitization at school age seemed to increase with extra vitamin and cod liver oil supplements during infancy. That's number 2. Number 3, oral supplementation with cod liver oil in childhood increased the odds of a history of having both asthma and hay fever. Number 4, we observed an association between vitamin D supplementation in infancy and an increased risk of atopy, allergic diseases, and allergic rhinitis, that's hay fever, later in life. Number 5, recently vitamin D has been proposed as one of the several environmental factors responsible for the increase in atopic allergic, remember, anaphylaxis is an allergic disease. During the last decades, atopic manifestations were more prevalent in the group with a higher intake of vitamin D3. Although small, this study supports previous investigations. Suggesting a role of vitamin D intake during infancy in the development of atopic allergy later in childhood. So you keep seeing, we find vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin A, vitamin D, cod liver oil, multivitamins. Garbage. Do not poison your children. So that's that thread. Now, this is the same thread, right? I'll post it anyway. This is the cod liver oil thread. So for those of you who think Weston Price was going to save humanity, what does he say about cod liver oil based on his pattern recognition and observations of children under his care? This quote, wait, let me go back up here. Yes, so this is from his own paper. Quote, I have frequently had mothers bring this question to me as a serious nutritional problem with their children. They had desired to do all they possibly could for their children and, in their efforts, had tried to follow the directions on the bottle or as otherwise were provided, which often meant large doses of cod liver oil. They have reported to me the difficulty they had in combating the rebellion of their children against the use of cod liver oil, which may have been in part a reaction of self-preservation. The children were trying to save their own lives, is what he's saying. Weston Price is admitting that these children are trying to save their own lives against the insistence of giving them the fatty liver extract called cod liver oil. Many of the children were reported to regurgitate, throw up the oil when it was forced down. Since it has been demonstrated that only the oil that is utilized contributes to the well-being of the human being or animal, it can readily be anticipated that compulsion, forcing oneself to take such a toxic product, could be very injurious or health damaging. Weston Price said that. Here's the link. This is a Weston Price paper. Here, let's do another paper from Dr. Price. Quote, cod liver oil, like many other food substances, they have at times been responsible for upsets in the allergic child, manifesting themselves in the form of vomiting, bile, diarrhea, bile, urticaria, bile in the skin, eczema, vitamin A toxicity, asthma, vitamin A and D and cod liver oil and multivitamins, all that crap, or food, or in a combination of these syndromes. Because of this frequent frequent complication. Frequent complication. Mr. Price, did you not notice this frequent complication and maybe change what you're doing? Oh, you didn't, did you? And now you've started a whole cult that is about forcing their children to take this poison. Anyway, we have been searching for a product which could be given to children sensitive to cod liver oil, whose diets for allergic reasons have been inadequate and who in addition is unable to tolerate cod liver oil in any form. We wish to report the cases of 4 allergic children in whom owing to the addition of cod liver oil to their diets, various types of allergic manifestations developed, other than the one for which they first came seeking relief. He made them worse with cod liver oil. This is his paper, Cod Liver Oil Sensitivity in Children. And here's another quote from Dr. Price, published in the book Nourishing Traditions. You can go look it up. Cod liver oil can be given in moderate doses without injury. Wait, so then there's doses that cause injury? Is that what he's saying? And to great advantage. Seldom, however, should the child be given more than 1 teaspoonful a day for extended periods because of toxic effects that often develop. Because of toxic effects that often develop. I mean, this is in a letter to his nieces and nephews. He's trying to warn his nieces and nephews to not poison themselves with cod liver oil by getting overzealous about this fatty liver extract. Okay? And this was the showing that zinc and protein raise vitamin A levels. So hopefully you understand that vitamin A causes allergies, and so does vitamin D. How do they do that? By raising the amount of calcium in your system. Calcium in your blood, calcium deposits into your tissues. You don't want this. Now, honestly, I couldn't find anything specifically on copper and anaphylaxis. There is some stuff on copper and sepsis, which I'll get into, but I found these while I was looking. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these, but here's a fun paper. Copper induces cell death by targeting lipoylated TCA cycle proteins. Copper induces cell death. Well, what might they call? Did they give this copper cell death a name? Here we go. Copper homeostasis. So homeostasis is another BS term they use, like signaling and metabolism and all this stuff when they're talking about a toxin. So when they're talking about a toxin, they'll gaslight you with words like homeostasis and signaling and all metabolism and all this stuff. Copper homeostasis and copper-induced cell death in the pathogenesis, the creation of heart disease, cardiovascular disease, and therapeutic strategies. Over the past few decades, multiple spans of 10 years, copper-induced cell death named cuproptosis has become increasingly recognized as an important process mediating, managing, leading the way the pathogenesis and progression of cardiovascular disease, including atherosclerosis, stroke, ischemia, reperfusion injury, and heart failure. Copper's good for you. No, it's not. So what happens when they take out copper? Capturing copper to inhibit inflammation. Pay attention. Capturing copper, chelating copper, taking copper out of the body to combat inflammation. Study has now shown that copper ions can drive inflammation. Yeah, go ahead and drink out of your copper cups and wear your copper bracelet and wear your copper infused clothes and eat all your plant-based diets and do all. Yeah, it's not going to end well. They're saying that they could use this pathway to treat inflammatory diseases. So now we're going to start. We're going to stick on copper for a little bit. Selenium, copper, zinc, and iron levels and mortality, death, risk of death in patients with sepsis and systemic inflammatory response syndrome. Do you think like anaphylaxis would be a systemic inflammatory response syndrome? Do you think it would fit under there? In Western Black Sea region, Turkey. Oh, I should have moved this to the other thing. Reduced basal selenium levels of patients with sepsis and systemic inflammatory response syndrome were associated with mortality. So selenium is something we use in the program quite a bit. I test hair levels for it. I do not test red blood cell selenium. I do not test serum selenium. Those are basically worthless. Hair testing is very good at this. And we test, we don't guess, and then we address. So if you want to know, can selenium be toxic if you take too much? Sure. So how do we avoid taking too much? Well, you can test. That's what we do. So does it make sense that if sepsis is connected to a reduced selenium level, like they didn't do studies on anaphylaxis with selenium, couldn't find anything. But here you see sepsis and selenium are connected. Okay. This was supposed to be the copper section. Prognostic, or kind of like predictive value of serum trace elements, copper and zinc levels in sepsis patients. So again, like I couldn't find anything on anaphylaxis, but we know that anaphylaxis and sepsis are so close that they often get mistaken for each other. Copper to zinc ratio were higher, more copper to less zinc. Whole blood zinc level was lower, and the differences were statistically significant. They're talking about the sepsis patients versus normal. Okay. Is there anything else I marked in here? So they actually say here, whole blood copper, whole blood zinc, copper zinc ratio have good predictive value for the outcome of sepsis patients. So they're predicting the value. And here they're talking about copper to zinc ratio was higher. How do you get that higher? Well, it's either higher copper or lower zinc or both. We know that the whole blood zinc level was lower and that the differences were significant. Okay. Another one. The patterns we look for generally, folks, are high copper and low zinc. I might do that, Joe. I might look up sulfur, see if we can find any connections. But I'm not really expecting to find much there. So the correlation between whole blood copper, zinc, and copper to zinc ratio and sepsis-induced left ventricular systolic dysfunction in patients with septic shock. So again, I have to look at sepsis because I can't find anything on anaphylaxis in this. But what are the patterns we find over and over and over and over and over, folks? We find high copper and low zinc. High copper, low zinc. So if you're out there on a protocol, or you're out there in a revolution, or you're out there and you've been somehow, or you're kind of in the Peat crew where you've been convinced that too much zinc is the worst thing that could ever happen, and we love copper, and you're wondering why you're not getting the results you want, well, I have bad news. You were misled. I'm sorry. You can always turn around. You can always change your direction. So this is sepsis-induced left ventricular systolic dysfunction. That's this SILVSD. And the left ventricular ejection fraction, LVEF, less than 50%. Whole blood copper levels and copper to zinc ratio were significantly higher, and zinc levels were lower in this septic heart problem compared with the non-problems. Pattern is there over and over and over again. I'm going to tell you, folks, if you try to pull out some studies where they're like, but copper was low in the blood in this, I'm telling you the copper was getting stuck in the liver, just like those vitamin A studies. Copper can just hit the liver and get stuck there and you can't get rid of it. What might cause that to happen? Lack of zinc, lack of selenium, lack of molybdenum. So when you have enough zinc and selenium and molybdenum, you're getting rid of that copper out of your liver. What do we test? We test zinc in both blood and hair, and we test selenium in the hair, and we test molybdenum in the hair, and we also go by molybdenum deficiency symptoms. We're not really messing around here. So, whole blood copper and zinc. So remember, whole blood copper was higher and zinc was lower. Displayed the value of predicting 28-day mortality, whether you were dead in a month or not from sepsis. Kind of important, right? Findings of this study suggest that whole blood copper levels and copper to zinc ratio are increased in this septic heart problem patients and positively correlated with cardiac dysfunction. So the worse these are, the higher the ratio and the higher the copper, correlated with more cardiac heart problems, while whole blood zinc levels are reduced and negatively associated with cardiac dysfunction. So that means that more zinc, less heart problems. That's what the negative association means. You just think of the opposite. So if it's less zinc, more heart problems, or more zinc, less heart problems. That's what they're saying there. Okay. So now we've established high copper and low zinc and low selenium in sepsis, which is the closest I could get to, let's see. Yeah, here we go. So we had some more stuff on zinc. Again, they just don't check it in anaphylaxis. Mechanistic insights into the protective impact of zinc on sepsis. Data accumulated over the last decade suggests that the nutritional status of patients. Wait, do we talk about deficiencies here? Would that be nutritional status? Oh, it would be. Okay. The nutritional status of patients as well as composition of their gut microbiome. What feeds your gut microbiome? What you feed it and what you coat it with every day in terms of your toxic bile. What grows in your garden? Well, it depends on the soil. So the nutritional status and their gut microbiome are strongly linked with the risk to develop sepsis, the severity of the disease, and the prognosis, the predictive value, how well you're going to do, how well they think you're going to do. In particular, the essential micronutrient zinc is essential in the resistance against sepsis and has been shown to be protective in animal models as well as in human patients. Well, zinc and sepsis. Again, we don't have any research on anaphylaxis because when somebody's in anaphylaxis, they're not exactly measuring their zinc and stuff. Sepsis, anaphylaxis is a bit more pressing than sepsis. Sepsis can go on longer than anaphylaxis. The trace element zinc is known to be crucial to ensure an appropriate immune response. During sepsis, a redistribution of zinc from serum into the liver has been observed, and several studies imply a correlation between zinc and sepsis outcome. Therefore, the alterations of zinc concentrations in different tissues might serve as one part of the host's defense mechanism against pathogens during sepsis by diverse mechanisms. Why would the liver want to move more zinc into it during anaphylaxis or sepsis? Why would it take the zinc out of the blood? Where was the problem happening? In the liver and the toxic bile. What does zinc protect you against? Copper, vitamin A, manganese, all these, a lot of other, lead, cadmium, mercury. Like, why would the body put zinc into the liver? Because if your liver dies, you die. So it's going to move all of its soldiers to where they're needed the most so that you don't die. Persistent low serum zinc is associated with recurrent sepsis in critically ill patients. Sepsis keeps happening. We don't know why. Well, they have low zinc. Gosh, do you ever think about supplementing them? You ever think about telling people about zinc? Throughout the study period, we report significantly decreased serum zinc levels in surgical and surgical sepsis patients reported to healthy controls. Lower serum zinc levels in surgical sepsis patients were associated with a higher susceptibility to a recurrent sepsis episode. So the lower they were, the more likely they are to have it over and over. Furthermore, surgical sepsis patients with a higher number of organ dysfunctions and increased in-hospital mortality at day 28 and 90 showed lower serum zinc levels at admission. So higher risk of dying and a higher number of organs that are malfunctioning with lower serum zinc levels. Are we catching a pattern yet, folks? Like I find all this information in like the space of an hour or two. It's not hard to find. I mean, it's not hard for me to find when I know what to look for, but it's right there. Why is medicine not fixing this problem? Why am I like the only guy out here talking about this? Do they not care about you? Do they not like you? Or are they just unwilling to go after this because you want to know what happens if you start admitting that the liver is the cause of all these problems? And then you start realizing how bad drugs are and how many drugs and jabs and poisons that are fed to us by the industrial complex is causing all of it. Do you understand that they can't talk about toxicity at all? They will not talk about toxicity. Because that's like looking behind the curtain, seeing in Oz, when you see the guy who runs it all. We report serum zinc levels as a promising biomarker. There's that word again in the diagnosis and evaluation of sepsis patients. Get your zinc. Why do they want you on a plant-based diet? There's no zinc on it. Is that good for you? So we got that. What was this one? This was selenium. So now we're on to selenium. We found some more on selenium. I should have moved the other one over here. Selenium modulates, controls the allergic response to whey protein in a mouse model for cow's milk allergy. Whey protein contains vitamin A. If you didn't know, whey protein contains vitamin A. 3-week-old female mice were intragastrically, so inside of their stomach, sensitized with whey protein and cholera toxin. Wow, a toxin. Imagine that. And randomly assigned to receive a control, low, medium, or high selenium diet. Acute allergic symptoms, allergen-specific immunoglobulin E levels, and mast cell degranulation were determined upon whey challenge. Body temperature was significantly higher in mice that received the medium selenium diet 60 minutes after the oral challenge with whey compared to the positive control group, which is indicative of impaired anaphylaxis. Impaired anaphylaxis is good. Anaphylaxis is associated with a decrease in body temperature. So impairing anaphylaxis means the body temperature stayed higher. That's a good thing. The medium selenium diet. Did I just talk about how you could give too much selenium? Oh, they gave him a high selenium diet and that didn't seem to show up here? Yes, you can take too much selenium. If you go out and you watch me do this and you go out on your own and you start taking stupidly high doses, which you may have no idea what they are, stupidly high doses of the minerals that I talk about, just because I said so, I didn't say to take anything. I'm not your doctor. If you're not working with me, I'm not your doctor. Even if you do work with me, I'm technically a nutritional consultant. So they had impaired anaphylaxis, so they were less likely to die. This was accompanied by reductions in antigen-specific immunoglobulins and reduced levels of mouse mast cell protease 1. I have all sorts of people. How do we fix mast cells, Dr. Smith? It's all the same stuff. We fix the liver. This study demonstrates that oral selenium supplementation may modulate allergic responses to whey by decreasing specific antibody responses and MMCP1 release. Now, why don't I just go do this? Let's go do forum. So this is my link here. I'll put this here. Get rid of this. So this is where Grant goes over this in one of his books too, but vitamin A is in whey protein. Vitamin A is in casein protein. Vitamin A is in dairy. It's in the fat in dairy. Vitamin A is all over dairy, which is probably why dairy is one of the most allergic foods, along with eggs. Why are egg yolks yellow? Well, vitamin A and carotenoids, retinol and carotenoids. So anyway, this if you want to see the research on it, this is where we go over all that stuff. Binding of vitamin A with milk alpha or beta caseins, interaction between casein and vitamin A. This beta-lactal globulin, that's what they brag about in whey. The major whey protein in the milk. So anyway, it's all there. Selenium helped reduce the whey allergic reaction. And here's another one on selenium and sepsis. Didn't do my perfect storm one. There we go. Let's do this one. Impact of selenium administration. So when they supplemented on severe sepsis or septic shock, a meta-analysis of randomized controlled trials. Obviously, you'd have to start this early. Selenium administration results in notable decrease in all-cause mortality, death from all causes, and the length of their hospital stay. Let's see, when did they give this to them? You can't just give them, I mean, even if they just gave them selenium when they're in the hospital or they injected selenium IV and they still got notable decrease in all-cause mortality, death from all causes, and the length of their hospital stay. That'd be pretty significant, right? Because they're not sending these people home with a selenium supplement. So, yeah. So, sepsis, anaphylaxis. What was this one? This was selenium. No. Wait, that was selenium. Okay, so now we're going to go over two fun things that we use in the program a lot. So I don't know if Kelsey Kenny is here in the chat, but Kelsey is our niacin, flush niacin, nicotinic acid expert, and she gave me this paper to go over today. Butyrate, valerate, and niacin ameliorate or lessen anaphylaxis by suppressing IgE-dependent mast cell activation, roles of GPR109A, PGE2, and epigenetic regulation. I mean, I don't have to read much more. Butyrate, where's the best place to get butyrate? It's not butter, folks. Butter's full of vitamin A. Butyrate comes about by your body, your probiotics, your gut biome, breaking down, digesting soluble fiber. So what do we use a lot on the program? Oh, soluble fiber to tolerance. And do we supplement niacin on the program? Flush niacin, nicotinic acid? Yes. Huh. Isn't it weird that we see people's food allergies and sensitivities going down? That's wild. It's wild that these are all connected. It's almost like there's research that shows all of it's connected. The administration of niacin, a ligand of the GPR109A, Kelsey is an expert on GPR109A, alleviated the symptoms of passive cutaneous skin anaphylaxis. Okay. I'd much rather be taking niacin on a daily basis than have to worry about using an EpiPen. Okay. Now, another favorite thing in the Love Your Liver program is activated charcoal, hardwood. The brand I like is Zen Principle. You can find it on Amazon. The utilization of activated charcoal in the management of anaphylaxis, a case series. This just came out 2 years ago. Now you're going to see their explanation. So here's what I've been saying the whole time. Anaphylaxis is a massive bile leak into the system. Activated charcoal soaks up bile really well. Allergens, as they're going to show you, they're going to be like, it soaks up the allergen. I don't think that's what's happening. Let's just go here and let's go activated. In the research, they tend to talk about activated carbon. Adsorption of bile salts on activated carbon. Yeah. There it is again. Activated carbon, activated charcoal soaks up bile. Adsorbs it. Okay. The mechanism for this action is proposed to be the result of the removal of bile salts in the gut. How would it remove it? You poop it out. Activated charcoal grabs onto bile, holds onto it, it adsorbs it, and then you poop it out. But if you take so much charcoal that you don't poop, then you got a whole nother problem. So what happened when they gave charcoal to these folks? In this article, let's just do this. Among the gastrointestinal decontamination methods is the use of activated charcoal. What do we need to decontaminate? It's toxins, right? Toxic things. In this article, we present 4 patients who developed anaphylaxis due to drug and food intake, not toxins necessarily, and were administered oral activated charcoal after their primary treatment. On average, 15 to 45 minutes after the first presentation was completed. The youngest of the patients was 22 years old and the oldest was 40. No side effects, no prolonged anaphylactic state, and no biphasic, like repeating, were observed in the follow-up of the patients. All patients were discharged after 48 to 72 hours of hospitalization. In anaphylaxis caused by oral allergens, the substance that initiates the reaction, bile, toxic bile, can be compared to a kind of toxin. Eliminating the allergen and reducing its absorption could be achieved by administering activated charcoal. Do you understand that what they mean is they mean soaking up? What they really are not explaining well, because they don't understand it, is they're soaking up the toxic bile that causes the anaphylaxis. It's not the allergen. Like if you ate food, you don't expect the charcoal to soak up the food. There's okay, just so you know, there's no evidence anywhere in any of the research of long-term charcoal use causing any nutrient deficiency at all. There is zero. You can go and look. Try to prove me wrong. You'll find one apple juice study where they put charcoal in apple juice and they saw some of the vitamins go down a little bit. That's it. They've given charcoal daily to people who had parts of their intestine removed, and they were giving them charcoal like 3 times a day to help with their colostomy bag stench. They never got nutritional deficiencies from it. For years, they took it. So get the idea that charcoal soaks up good nutrients out of your head. Charcoal soaks up toxic things and holds onto them. The more toxic, the more it holds onto it. So the allergen is not, the allergen was the trigger to dump the bile. Reducing its absorption is not what the charcoal is doing in terms of the allergen. The charcoal is soaking up the bile. Activated charcoal should be considered adjunctive therapy in treating food and oral drug-induced anaphylaxis. Would charcoal soak up a drug? Yes, because drugs are toxins. This treatment, when administered in a timely manner, might prevent the development of biphasic reactions. That's like where people have to take epi multiple times. And the prolongation of the allergic process in anaphylaxis. Do you think they're ever going to use charcoal in the hospitals or at allergists? Who's going to make any money? Nobody's going to make any money. So will they do it? No, because they don't care about you. They care about money. When you finally realize that they don't care about you at all, whether they're actively hating on you and wanting you to die is a whole nother matter, but they do not care about you. It's weird how all these things we use in the Love Your Liver program help reduce anaphylaxis and sepsis, is it not? And that I could show early on how bile and blockages of the bile pathways are related to both anaphylaxis and sepsis. So, let me see if I got anything else. Not that. No, that's it. Okay. So we do have some questions, and I'm going to get to those now. We do have some super chats. So first, thank you all for staying. Oh yeah, we're already at 12:30. I told you this was going to be a long one. Okay. Wait. I guess I can't see the whole the whole chat. Okay, Joe, if there are super chats, I'm going to need for you to repost them. Here we go. Okay, $5 chat from Fabuladium. What are the best beans, lowest lectins? I have haricote. Any others okay? Also, should mushrooms be avoided? What about lion's mane? Love the channel. Well, thank you. Glad you enjoy it. Okay, the worst bean, I'll tell you this. The worst bean is kidney beans. Kidney beans have a very specific lectin in them that if it is not cooked properly, people have died from kidney beans. Just kidney beans. I used to remember like when my mom used to make like homemade chili, or when I was starting to make, back when I used to, still eat nightshades, when I'd make chili and I'd use kidney beans in them, like I felt super bloated and super gross. And then when I finally took the kidney beans out, I felt much better. So kidney beans are the worst by far. In terms of the best beans, I mean, if we're going to get into polyphenols, like the color of beans, generally the lighter the color of the bean, the better. So the more white or off-white it is, the better. Now, the one exception to that is black-eyed peas, which are a bean, right? But black-eyed peas actually have quite a decent amount of vitamin A in them. Will may want to share Will has done something where he calls it skinning beans, where you actually cook them or cook them somehow, and then you grind them up, and then you actually get the shell, the hull off the bean. So you're only eating the inside of the bean. I think that's probably useful. I think it's also way more effort than I'm willing to do. So that's just that. So now, but yeah, black beans do have more polyphenols. But the other thing about beans is that copper and polyphenols, people worry about those. Now, first of all, there was somebody out there. I will not mention this person by name because I will not give them any attention, but they were an all muscle meat carnivore, and they decided to add beans to their program. And they ate beef and beans, the cowboy diet, for something like a year. Now, I tell people, like, look, if you are eating beans, if you are adding beans to your diet and you get to like 2 weeks and you still do not feel good, you should stop eating beans, or you should pick a different bean, or you should eat less beans, or you should figure out, Doc, it hurts when I do this. Well, then don't do that. I say it over and over. And this person said they got really mad at me, and they were trying to claim on Twitter that I was totally wrong because they ate beans every day for a year and they felt like they got worse overall. Well, I guess you missed the part about, Doc, it hurts when I do this, then don't do that. It took you a year to realize it. Don't blame me. Also, the more putrefactive the gut is, the bigger problems people have with beans. What's the best way to get a putrefactive gut? Eat only meat. Kill all your bifido. And then try to shove soluble fiber in there in your putrefactive gut. It doesn't work. You got to baby it. You got to baby steps. You got to listen to the probiotic articles and try supplementing the probiotics and doing these things, and not just be like, well, I ate the same food for a year and I finally figured out that I was worse. And then I stopped eating and then I felt better. And I'm like, you could have done that 50 weeks ago. I give the advice in the program. 50 weeks ago, 52 weeks in a year, minus 2 weeks. 50 weeks ago, you could have gotten out of that problem. So for people out there who want to blame me for their problems on the program, and you didn't listen to if you're going to be dumb, you better be tough. And if, Doc, it hurts when I do this, well, then don't do that. If you don't want to follow the simple advice I give you of listen to your body, it's not my fault when you eat the wrong thing. We fix people because we let people listen to their body. We fix people that nobody else fixes because other people are saying, oh, well, you should eat kale. And the person's like, I feel like shit when I eat kale. And they're like, oh, you should eat it. It's good. You'll get over it. You'll suddenly feel okay on it. No, nothing works that way. We don't do that. And funny thing is as people get better, let's say they didn't used to tolerate beans, all of a sudden they may start tolerating beans. because their gut biome got better. And that was the problem before. So anyway. Okay, Joe, can you put up so in terms of the best beans, like white or off-white are going to be the best. And ones you tolerate the best. So from Sarah, hey, Dr. Smith, do keloids have anything to do with vitamin A in the system? And can someone rid themselves of this condition? Thanks. Well, let me go do a quick search. Scarring and, well, so here's what I'm going to warn you about. We may go and do a search for keloids and retinoic acid, and they're going to show, there may be studies showing that in cell studies, retinoic acid helped reduce keloids. And I'm going to tell you that whenever they do retinoic acid in the cell study and they say it helps this, it means it absolutely makes it worse in real life. It's called the duration paradox. Anyone else out there has any comments if they got help with keloids through the program? Love for you to post it. Or if you had less scarring. When you get scars, if you scar less now, if the scar is less prominent and all that stuff. I think I've looked this up before. Let me go, hold on. Let me go on my forum. I may have a testimonial there from someone. Oh, so this was the mega list of vitamin A toxicity symptoms that I put together from 3 very legit sources. Let me move it. Hold on. Let me do this. Okay. What they had in here, excess collagen production was one of the side effects of vitamin A toxicity. Keloids are one example of this process of excess collagen production. So yes, we should be able to see improvements with that. Yeah, this you want to look at this list. Where did I get this list from? I went to, this is a CLO is this is a Brazilian journal. I forget what this is, and ToxNet, Liver Tox. So I went to very legit sources to get this list of vitamin A toxicity symptoms. But yeah, let me see if I can find anything else on it. Let me just go. So my suspicion is there's a zinc deficiency that's connected to it. Whenever I see skin stuff, I think of zinc deficiency. When I think of vitamin A toxicity, I think of zinc deficiency. When I think of copper toxicity, I think of zinc deficiency. Yeah, they're not really doing too much in terms of minerals on keloids. Yep. They're not doing any nutritional stuff on it. Keloids and osteoporosis. Hey, do you know vitamin A can cause osteoporosis? Absolutely. And there we have the association between keloids and osteoporosis. Real world evidence. Real world evidence. Isn't that our favorite? Osteoporosis risk was higher in patients with keloids compared to controls, especially in young subjects and subjects without comorbidities or more diseases at once. So if you haven't seen my blog connecting, yeah, let me get that for you, Joe. What was I looking up on here? Oh, I was going to do osteoporosis. The osteoporosis connection is pretty straightforward. They could just like look at the doses of vitamin A people ate in a day and be like, oh, you're going to have worse osteoporosis. So pretty basic. And the conventional community crapped a brick because they were like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And then you got the Weston Price being like, no, it doesn't cause osteoporosis. vitamin A can never cause anything bad. Older adults are at significant risk for osteoporosis and related fractures, and their serum or blood levels of retinol increase with age. It's weird that that goes together. Hey, you want to know what also increases with age in the blood? Copper. Excessive dietary intake of vitamin A is associated with reduced bone mineral density and an increased risk for hip fracture. The highest incidence of osteoporotic fractures is found in Northern Europe, where dietary intake of vitamin A is unusually high because of cod liver oil. In animals, the most common adverse effect of toxic doses of retinol is spontaneous fracture. High dietary intake of retinol, vitamin A, seems to be associated with osteoporosis. And this was at 5,000 units. Some of you health nuts are eating 5,000 units at breakfast, and you wonder why you're sick. So 1 ounce of beef liver is 5,000 units. 1 teaspoon of cod liver oil is about 5,000 units. 25 grams of sweet potato is about 5,000 units. Some people might have all those in their breakfast. Bad news. So anyway, so that's the keloid connection. We see that, you know, we're kind of indirectly connecting these. Oh, wait, what were they seeing here? Hyperlipidemia too? Oh, in the keloids patients, a high incidence of osteoporosis was also associated with advanced age, high Charleston comorbidity index score, hyperlipidemia, chronic liver disease, stroke, and depression. Did a whole show on depression and toxic bile theory. Chronic liver disease. I mean, when do we not go over this? Hyperlipidemia, high triglycerides, high cholesterol. That's all liver problems. Vitamin A toxicity causes high triglycerides. A lack of nicotinic acid, aka flush niacin, will cause high cholesterol. Advanced age, copper goes up as you age. Vitamin A goes up as you age because the toxicity accumulates. And in keloids patients, we're connected to all of this and osteoporosis. So there's your connection. Yes. You may want to look into some topical applications of zinc to the keloid. Baby, you know, baby diaper rash creams are often like 3 ingredients, and one of them is like 40% zinc oxide. If Kelsey has her zinc nicotinate liquid out, you may want to look into applying that, or if she has her zinc nicotinate cream out, which works much better than zinc oxide creams do, and it doesn't. The zinc nicotinate cream does not dry bright white like zinc oxide does. So, yeah, that's what I got. Okay, so let's Joe post the next one. Matthias, what's the best order of doing things for someone who has yellowing of the skin? I'm very familiar with the Love Your Liver program, but is the order of adding things from Love Your Liver still the same for this urgent type of situation? I mean, you can do, if you want to try to pull stuff out of the skin, you know, we have 2 approaches to skin stuff. One is, I mean, you can go out and try to get sunlight or UVB to break down the bilirubin that is accumulating in your skin. But if you don't tolerate sunlight or UVB, then you need to be very, very careful with that. If it's making you feel worse, you're dumping too much bile at once. So you could also, if you wanted to try to pull it out, you could do charcoal baths. Yes, you put charcoal in a bath. It's messy, but it will adsorb the bile toxins right out of your skin. Doesn't mean, and so, okay, folks, here's something else. Not just you, Mathay, but everybody here. If I talk about applying charcoal topically or doing a charcoal bath or an oats, like colloidal oats, where you grind up oats very, very fine, and then you put those in a bath. When I talk about these things and you do it once and you're like, it didn't work. Okay, come on now. Going for one jog doesn't make you, my video has been disabled. Sorry, all of a sudden I got a notice on my screen that said my video has been disabled. So that was weird. So we're back. Anyway, going for one jog does not get you fit. Doing one application of topical charcoal or topical oats or topical zinc does not fix a problem. This takes work. This is decades worth of toxicity accumulation in your system. Doing one thing one time doesn't fix it. Okay? You got to do it repeatedly, like daily. So, but yes, you could do the colloidal oats in the bath. I would probably do rolled oats instead of steel cut because the rolled oats are going to be kind of more open and broken open, and the soluble fiber will come out more. But yeah, with oats, the reason why do oat baths or oat lotions help with eczema, which is vitamin A and bile coming out of your skin? Because it soaks it up. You can eat soluble fiber to soak up toxins in your gut, or you can put it on your skin. Same thing with charcoal. Sometimes one works better than the other. Sometimes you do both of them at once and it works great. Sometimes you just pick one. So, but no, there's nothing. The order of adding stuff. For those of you who don't know, or you haven't been in the Love Your Liver program before, or you haven't been in a while, for those of you who haven't been inside the Love Your Liver program in a while, there's some really important stuff like the nicotinic acid articles. I can't believe I talk to people. Folks, if you're coming to me as a private client and you haven't read the entire Love Your Liver program, like, get on it. What are you doing? What are you paying for? I don't have time in an hour consult, to explain the days and days worth of information in the Love Your Liver program. You taking some zinc and selenium and molybdenum and magnesium and all that stuff is not going to fix all your problems if you don't know the other stuff in the program. Read the program. I don't have time to explain it all to you. The people who get the results with what we're doing read the whole program. They watch all the videos. It may take time. It will take time. You know, it's like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Do one thing at a time. Take on one set of articles at a time. Watch one video at a time, and then work on that for a while, however long it takes you to work on it. But don't just think that having one consult with me and sitting on your ass and not doing anything is going to get you better. That's not how this works. God helps those who help themselves. Do the work. Fix yourself. I am a guide. I am not a stretcher that's going to carry you. You working with me does not automatically mean you're going to get better, because you don't have to do a dang thing that I say, and you don't have to read a dang thing that I wrote, and you don't have to watch any of the videos that I ever did. You signing up to work with me does not automatically mean you're going to get better at all. Or you could be like somebody else who ate meat and beans for a year and made themselves worse when they should have stopped after 2 weeks because they didn't follow the instructions. Don't blame me when that shit happens. That's not my fault. User error is a very real thing, as you've seen with like Amazon reviews, where people are like, I couldn't get this thing to work, and they didn't realize there was an on-off switch or something. Or they didn't realize they had to plug it into the wall, and you're like, wow, really? I didn't get better on Dr. Smith's program. Oh, you mean you missed this whole part? You didn't read the program, and then you tried to blame me because it didn't work? Seriously, take some responsibility, people. We need responsibility in this program. If you are not willing to take self-responsibility for where your health is at right now and you getting yourself out of it, don't bother. This is not for you. I am not here to take lazy people who will not do the work. Do the work. Listen to the instructions, read the articles again, watch the videos again. If something's not working for you, come to office hours if you're working with, as me, with a private client. We give so many resources. Hope Tipton is like on the network all day long answering questions. Do you have to follow what she says? No. You could just read it and be like, oh, that's nice, and then ignore it. You could go to Nathan's office hours if you're working with Nathan. You can still go to my office hours if you're working with Nathan or me. You can go to either one. You can ask questions on the network. Like people who are in here, you have so many resources. And then people will tell you, go read this article because Dr. Smith spelled it out there and you don't do it. Come on. Do the work. It does work. And be patient. Don't be greedy and don't be impatient. Don't think that you're just going to force everything to go fast just because you're tired of being sick. Yes, the more sick you are, the more impatient you're going to want to be. And also, the more sick you are, the harder you push detox, the more it's going to kick you in the ass. Because you're more toxic. That's why you're more sick. And that's why you've been sick for longer. So, Mathey, this is not directed specifically at you. I just needed to do a little rant there so people understand what your part, all of you who want to get better, your part in this is like 90% of it. I'm the guide giving you the very, 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 very important 10% of the information, and then 90% of it is you doing it. You want to get better from anaphylaxis? You're watching this later. You got a lot of freaking work to do. You are blowing holes in your bile system. Why it happens, I don't know. How do we stop it? Here's what we do, folks. Stop putting in poisons, toxins, as much as you can. We facilitate the removal of stored toxins from the system via things like soluble fiber and charcoal and making sure you're pooping regularly. Number 3, we refill the mineral deficiencies, the critical mineral deficiencies that you need to both help detox and to protect you from the toxins that are already in you. And if we do these things, your bile system fixes itself. So the toxic bile theory explains why these things happen. But you can't just fix your bile system. Because the toxic bile is the root cause of your health issues. Yeah, the episodes 53 and 71. If you want to go watch the basics of toxic bile theory, go watch on this channel, Livestream 53 or Livestream 71. Those are the basics. I'm not going over the basics anymore because we're way past that. But I remind you of that so you can go watch them. Okay. Toxic bile theory, like I said, when I go over my labs, when I make that video soon, I have almost no bile in my blood. I am proof of concept. I have my concept. I've gotten rid of my health issues. I'm testing them. Do I have bile in my blood? I have almost no bile in my blood. Wow. So it actually works. If it didn't work, if my bile acids were going up over 5 years, there'd be a problem. But it's working. So moving on. So Mathey, I would read the order of adding stuff in the Love Your Liver program. That's why the order of adding stuff is there. That's what it's for. So how to combat stress, especially exam or emotional. Well, that's a huge issue. If you're not in the Love Your Liver program, some of these things I'm going to tell you, you don't have access to. Number 1. Potassium. Correcting potassium deficiency is the quickest way for most people to feel better, especially with anxiety or depression or fatigue or any of that stuff. Now, how do you do that, Dr. Smith? Well, I have 6 or 7 articles in a section in the Love Your Liver program. Am I just going to say, well, take X milligrams of this a day of this form? No, I don't do that. I'm not some half-ass practitioner who just puts out a protocol. Protocols, it's like protocols are like statistics. Like the statistic might work for that one situation, but it doesn't work for everything else. You have to experiment with potassium. Then we have magnesium. My magnesium lotion is the best product on the market by far, and I have no qualms with saying that. I don't think anybody could challenge me and come up with something better at this point. Magnesium helps muscles relax, which means it helps your nervous system relax. Potassium and magnesium are what I call the anti-stress minerals. Topical magnesium is the best way to get it. I have a whole video live stream on magnesium, topical magnesium. That's free right here on this YouTube channel. Potassium, I don't take lightly, so that's in the Love Your Liver program. Why do you charge for people to go see the Love Your Liver program, Dr. Smith? Because I need to keep the riffraff out, the people who would take the advice wrong and then go and screw themselves up and try to blame me all over the internet. I'm not trying to make some Facebook group here. I don't tolerate trolls. You try to come on the Love Your Liver program and troll, you're done. You speak poorly of me or the program on the internet, you're done. I'm not here to tolerate people getting in the way of this train. The train is coming through. You don't have to be on it. We would love for you to be on it, but you don't have to be on it. I consider my network and my Twitter feed like my house. If you came into my house and you said the things that people on the internet like to say and they think they have no repercussions, I would kick you out of my house. So you come onto my network or you come onto my Twitter feed and you say stuff that I would not tolerate in my house because this is where I'm doing my thing, I kick you out. It's just the way it is. So potassium, magnesium. Now, what do we work on long term that tends to cause anxiety and depression? As I went over, so if you watch the depression live stream, anxiety and depression are two sides of the same coin. They're the same problem. What especially toxicity do we fix to fix this? Vitamin A and copper toxicity. Both of these things deplete potassium and magnesium. So short term, you can do some magnesium and potassium to help. Long term, we fix the toxicities that are driving the deficiencies. Finally, one other thing I do like, it's called Rescue Remedy. It is a homeopathic flower essence spray. It's what's called a low potency homeopathic. Just look up Rescue Remedy. I like the spray the best because it travels the easiest. It is something that you can use for yourself or for your kids or for whoever. You can put it on the skin and rub it in. Don't spray it on like open wounds. It does have a little bit of, I believe it has a teeny little bit of whiskey in it as a preservative. Okay. So it's not the whiskey that's doing the work, like 2 sprays and that's not it. It is something that can really, really calm things down. Rescue Remedy, it's amazing when it works. It really works. I just think of it turns down the stress level. It doesn't make it go away. It just turns it down. So those are some simple things. Taking a nice bath that isn't full of copper is good. So, but yeah. And then practicing, there can be some cognitive behavioral therapy where you're like, as an example, I remember my ex-wife used to get extremely anxious and nervous before every test that she took, that she was going to fail. And I said to her, is there any evidence in your history of you ever failing a test that you prepared for? And she said, no. And I said, well, why are you worried then? Did you prepare for this one? Yeah, but I think I'm going to fail. And I'm like, if you can't see the pattern, there's nothing I can tell you that will help you. I don't know. I had a different mindset, maybe I'm built a little different, but I would go into tests and go, well, I've done the best I can. Whatever happens, like I took extra tests in high school to prepare for college. Like I took the ASVAB, the military test 3 times just for the heck of it. multiple SATs, multiple ACTs. I knew it was just, it's exposure therapy. If you want to get better at things, do them more. And by better, if you want them to worry you less, do them more. Guys, if you want to be less anxious about approaching women, approach a woman. Do it more than once, and you'll find that it's not that scary. Same thing. If shooting guns scares you, go shoot guns some more. You'll be less scared. So, that is that. Okay, and Rustica says, address the heroic psychosis that detox must hurt and be uncomfortable. Well, does it have to? Okay, there's going to be times in this process. I've talked about detox and retracing and other things here before. First, when you push, okay, so let me give you the definition here again. Not for you and Rustica, but for everybody. Okay. Your toxic bile is the cause of and the solution to your health problems. It's the cause of and the solution to, right? So you're full of toxic bile in your liver. Your liver's got stored toxins from decades. You're nutrient deficient. You're trying to do all this stuff. A lot of the things you've done in the past that you thought were good for you because one short-term study said so or whatever are shutting down your bile production. So here's how you could feel better symptom-wise, short-term. You take something, vitamin A and vitamin D have both been shown to do this, just so you know, that slows down your bile production. If you are leaking bile and you make less bile, do you understand how you would leak less bile? And so then you'd have less bile going into your bloodstream causing you symptoms. So you could feel better. Is that going to end? Yes. What happens when you stop taking the thing that suppresses the bile production? All the problems come back. Plus they're worse because you weren't detoxing via the bile and now you've accumulated more toxins. So all these, this is why a lot of people, they're like, well, I took this herb for like 5 years and then I stopped taking it and the problem came right back. And it's worse now. Well, I'm explaining to you how that works. So that's the bile is the cause of your health issues. And you can treat the symptoms of it by reducing your bile production. Now, as we are going to get you healthier, okay, nearly everything that you were doing that was wrong is often either increasing your bile leakage or decreasing your bile production, or it's just going straight into your blood. It's causing problems with the bile. So as we fix people, almost by definition, they're going to start making more bile because their liver desperately wants to get rid of the toxicity. And that's how their liver is going to do it. It doesn't really, your liver doesn't really care. Okay, look at this. Anaphylaxis. Like probably such a massive bile dump that it can kill you. Do you think your liver cares if you're going to be a little uncomfortable if you dump too much bile? If anaphylaxis can happen and get triggered and nearly it could kill you? Or sepsis? Like what causes these massive bile dump leaks into the system? I don't know. But if they had more selenium in them, they were more likely to live through it. If they had more zinc in them, they were more likely to live through it. Do you see why we're fixing these things? So anyway, these things are going to, on a regular basis, they're going to increase your bile production. And this is why I warn people that if you take too much of something and you start feeling worse, you need to back off because you're dumping too much bile. So people start thinking that, oh, bile, I'll just eat, the people who get it totally wrong, they're like, I'll just eat tons of fat and dump tons of bile. And they wonder why they feel like absolute crap because you're leaking bile. And if you dump more bile and you leak the same percentage of it, you have more bile in your blood. So the toxic bile is the cause of and the solution to your problems. You're coming here because you have a bile problem. You can very easily make that problem worse. by not listening to the warnings, the multiple precautions and warnings that I tell people about not pushing too hard. Over and over and over. Do I not say this all the time, people? So what people will often do, we get newbies who think they're the toughest person to ever come out of the train station, and they're going to overdo everything. I'm going to show Dr. Smith just how fast I can get better. Remember, you're coming here because the toxic bile made you sick enough that you felt bad enough that you're coming to get help. And now you're going to push that even harder. What do you think is going to happen to your symptoms? You're going to get worse. How long is that going to last? I don't know. How many decades worth of toxicity do you have in your liver? Nobody knows. So again, the cause of and the solution to your problems. Dumping more bile. The bile is what eats the holes in your liver. It eats the holes in your stomach. It eats the holes in your bile ducts. It eats the holes in your gut. So do you think if you dump a whole bunch of bile at once, do you think it might eat holes and make you worse? Yeah. So a lot of people, does detox have to make you feel worse? Not necessarily, but it's probably going to at some point, because when you dump a bunch of bile, or like as your liver gets better at making bile, all of a sudden the same things you were doing, your liver's gotten better. Let's say you used to run on the treadmill, and all of a sudden you're like, one day you're like, wait, I can up the speed on the treadmill. I feel totally fine doing this. I'm going to up the speed on the treadmill. And just one day you're like, well, this is easy. Let's do this. So your liver does the same thing. Your liver's like, oh, I'm getting less toxic. I'm getting less toxic. I'm getting less toxic. Oh, let's ramp up our bile dumping, our bile production and dumping, so we can get rid of this toxicity, right? Person's like, I can run faster on the treadmill so I can lose weight better. Same thing. Your liver is just like, let's get rid of this problem. So then your liver starts dumping more bile. And if people don't adjust what they're doing, sometimes they got to adjust it downwards, then they can aggravate the detox. The other thing is that people don't know their limits or how much they can take of something until you never know your limits until you push into them, right? Then what should you do when you hit your limit? You shouldn't stay at your limit. You should back off a little bit. What do some people do? They're like, oh, I feel like crap. This is amazing. I'm detoxing. Let's do more. Well, that's not what I say to do. So are there going to be times? Well, so what we see, what I want to see. Okay. Fake detox, fake retracing, fake healing crises, fake whatever term you want to use in the healing world. Fake stuff is where you feel worse and you continue to feel worse and you continue to feel worse and you continue to feel worse and you're not getting better. You're having cycles of feeling like worse crap. And then in between, maybe you just feel worse than you did when you started. I saw a woman go on with the biggest name in nutritional balancing, the biggest name in nutritional balancing for 3 years. She got worse and worse and worse. And they just kept telling her, it's just detox. It's just retracing. Just eat more vegetables. Nearly lost her marriage. Finally got out of that. Started to work with me. And we started to get her better pretty darn quickly. If you are getting worse and worse and worse, and a practitioner is continually claiming you're just detoxing, run away. Save your money. They're making you worse. They're not making you better. Now, true detox cycles, when you go through them, and in the process, it's a cycle. Notice I said a detox cycle. It's not just detoxing for years. It's a detox cycle. Like you go through it, your body decides it's going to dump some extra toxicity, and it passes. And then you feel even better than you did before. Really a critical difference. So it's like you're going up and then there's a little step back and then you go up higher and then a little step back and then you go up higher. And then you see how this is going up versus like the other one where it's like detox, you feel crappy, detox, you feel crappier, detox, you feel crappier. There's this huge difference. Talked to a lady yesterday. She was coming to me and she's kind of like apologizing that her labs look a little worse than before. And I was like, but how do you feel? And she's like, oh my gosh, I'm so much better. All this, I can sleep now. My energy's better. My skin's better. All that. I'm like, okay, we care about results here. Detox is a messy process. Your labs can look a little messy in the process of cleaning up, right? You ever cleaned up a place and made it messier in the process until all the cleaning was done? So I told her, I said, I don't care about the labs in between. The labs are our roadmap. Your symptoms are the turn-by-turn directions, how we get there, how you get there your own individual way, which may be different than anybody else. Think of all the Google Maps, you can take 10 different routes to get to a place. 10 different people might have 10 different routes. Are you getting better? Yes, we're progressing towards the end goal. This is something that, another thing that I guess I'm pretty rare in, is that I can have somebody in front of me and say, how are you doing? And they say, I'm doing so much better. Thank you for what you're doing. And I can look at their labs and I could be like, in my head, I might be like, well, labs look not as good as before, but I have the balls to just say, you're doing better. We're doing the right things. Your labs look a little worse. Probably detox. How do I know it's true detox? Because they're getting better. That's how we know it's true detox. Over time, they have but they're going upwards. Will there be moments where you don't feel good on this program? Of course, because you're going to test your limits. Usually what I tell people, like let's say somebody comes to office hours, which is the small group follow-ups and troubleshooting that I do for my clients, and Nathan does for his as well. If somebody comes in and they're like, Dr. Smith, all of a sudden this week I started feeling crappy, you know what my first question is? What did you change? Shouldn't be. Doc, it hurts when I do this. Okay, what'd you do? Let's make it stop hurting. It's really simple. It's very I don't understand why more people don't do an approach like I do, where it's like, let's just listen to the person. Like, I'm not like your other doctor who gaslights you and they're like, oh no, it's just your hormones or whatever. Let me just give you hormones. The reason you're depressed has nothing to do with your toxicity or your toxic marriage or whatever. Let's just give you a drug. Like, I don't understand. And even a lot of natural practitioners just give you an herb, right? They'll just be like, here's some St. John's wort, or here's a homeopathic remedy for your mood. Like, I use homeopathy a bit. I do homeopathic detox therapy, which I'm going to put the articles up finally in the program today. But it's something that's very specific. And if it helps, it's amazing. And if it doesn't, we tried. That's it. And somebody's out like $100-something. How many of us have wasted way stupider amounts of money on health stuff that didn't pan out? So homeopathy is not, like I talked about rescue remedy today. If you throw away homeopathy, I'm sorry, you made a huge mistake. If you totally think that everything, you've made a huge mistake. It has its place. It's not for everything. Like, if somebody's starving to death, homeopathy is not going to fix them. Okay, so give up the idea that homeopathy is going to fix everything. That's lunacy. But ignoring homeopathy, that's a big mistake too. So anyway, I think we're about done. That's all the super chats. So I'm going to wrap it up. I went a little over today, but hope you all enjoyed that. And I will 497 chats. My goodness. Wow. Y'all are busy. Okay. Have a great weekend. Hope that made some sense. We'll be back next week with another episode. Bye now.